Very well. Good morning. Welcome to the program. How are you doing? And it's the 18th day of July 2023. Still cold here in the CBD, Nairobi. But nonetheless, we have to get the show on the road and it's going to be hot. I hope you are doing fantastic. Now, today, we are going to be talking about matters governance. Where do you draw the line? So today we want to talk about democracy, rights and responsibilities. Democracy, rights and responsibilities. Where do we draw the line? So far we've heard what the president said and told his luminaries, and now Azimio also had their press conference yesterday, and everybody seemingly is going back to their backyard. What is it going to be? Starting tomorrow, Thursday and Friday, that's going to be forming part of a discussion on people and politics. But before then, the show is on the road. Vivian Ndegwa, good morning.
Good morning, Victor. We start off Good Morning Kenya, and we are more than pleased that you are tuned in this morning. Now, I don't know, when we are looking for a job normally, or when you get to sign that work contract, many of us admit that we can work well under pressure. But how true is that? Now today I will be joined by Mercy Irongo, who is a psychologist, and our discussion will be on burnout at work. I'm sure that so many people get burnt out at work because of one thing or another. We will be discussing all that and more. My name is Vivian Ndegwa. Good morning, Ray.
Now that is a good topic right now, because from tomorrow, that is Wednesday through Thursday and Friday, journalists are going to be keeping tabs on what is going to be happening in regard to the planned demos by the opposition. This is after calls from the political parties asking the two factions, that's government and opposition, to find an amicable solution to this particular situation. On the other hand, the courts yesterday gave a green light to hold these particular demonstrations that the government and its security operators has termed as illegal. Good morning once again. And if you're going to be using the Thika Road route this morning to the Central Business District, I'd advise caution, especially at Allsops. There's a very grisly accident this morning where one has been confirmed dead. Good morning once again. I'm Regina Manyera. Let's bring you up to speed with stories that have been making headlines in the last 12 hours. And we start off with an update in regard where we are when it comes to matters politics, where the political parties liaison committee now wants leaders to resort to dialogue and end the opposition protests, which it says is hurting the economy. The committee is warning that hardline positions and protests can only plunge the country into turmoil.
Various stakeholders are now worried about the trajectory the opposition protests are taking.
And the further comments by a few of us.
Various stakeholders are now worried about the trajectory the opposition protests are taking. The political parties liaison committee, for instance, is proposing a national conversation to end the demos.
We find ourselves confronted with a crisis that threatens our very existence as a nation. Each and every Kenyan must understand that the solution to this situation lies not in military or grandiose grandstanding, but in dialogue.
So it is incumbent upon the two leaders to help this nation heal. PPLC is ready to help do that, because the 90 political parties, fully registered political parties, are concerned at what is happening today.
The committee appealing to the security officers to exercise restraint while handling protesters.
I don't know what he's organizing.
Meanwhile, the women of Kenya are expressing concerns that the protests are threatening to paralyze the already fragile economy. Under the auspices of Eco Network Africa, African Women Leaders Network, Women Mediation Network and the Democracy Trust Fund, the women are calling on Kenyans to think of the future of their country.
Admittedly, cost of living is high. But as a result, Kenyans are hungry and angry. While we appreciate that all Kenyans have a right to picket, demonstrate, and assemble, we always remember that our constitutions provide that such actions should be carried out peaceably and that participants should be unarmed.
Now, while that was happening, the Azimio coalition wants the police to exercise maximum restraint while handling protesters who they claim are agitating for their constitutional rights. The opposition team alleges its protests are aimed at bringing down the cost of living and will proceed as planned on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, and not laced with any political connotations.
The comments by a few of us.
Speaking after a meeting that took stock of the planned demonstrations and the state of signature collection, the Azimio MPs remained defiant and they will hit the streets for 3 days in their push for the repealing of the Finance Act.
The thousands of Kenyans turning up for protests are not just Azimio supporters. They are Kenyans from across all political and non-political formations who have been brought together by suffering.
The MPs downplaying banning of street protests by Interior CS Kithure Kindiki, terming it as an attempt to subvert the constitution.
These protests will go on in line with Article 37 of our constitution, which, as you all know, provides for freedom of peaceful assembly and picketing. And no person, no authority has got the power to suspend the operation of Article 37 of our Constitution.
The legislators calling on police not to use force on protesters. It claims the protests are part of keeping the Kenya Kwanza administration on check after it abandoned its promises, while dismissing assertions that the street protests are proxy political battles.
Bring down the cost of living today. And you will not be on the streets on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday.
In Nairobi, we live as a community. Kikuyu, Luya, Jaluo, kila mtu hapa. Saa ile Jaluo analala njaa, Muluya analala njaa, Mkikuyu analala njaa.
Kenyans are past that stage. And since they lack imagination, Kenya Kwanza is the only political formation still thinking and talking about these handshakes and the rest.
Now, as the opposition maintains that the demos planned for tomorrow, Thursday and Friday are on, the High Court Judge Lawrence Mugambi declined to stop a petition seeking to block the planned opposition-led protest scheduled for those days mentioned. In his ruling, the judge directed the petitioners to instead serve the respondents with the petition within 3 days and the respondents to give a response in 10 days. The matter filed under a certificate of urgency will now have to wait a little bit longer after the judges set the mentioned day 2 months from now, that being 20th of September.
In a fresh twist by a Kenyan by the name Martin Gitau, had filed a petition to stop the planned demonstration by the opposition. In his petition, Gitau, through his lawyer Adrian Kamodho, argued the demonstrations were negatively affecting the economy and paralyzing emergency services. Additionally, he had sought to have the court bar Azimio allied parties from accessing funds from the political parties' fund kitty. However, Justice Lawrence Mugambi ruled the matter will come up for mentioning on 21st September 2023, 2 months from now. He ordered the petitioners to serve the respondents with the documents pending the start of the case. Separately, these were the scenes outside Milimani Law Court following the acquittal of televangelist Gilbert Dare, who has been battling a child theft case for almost 2 decades. Dare of the alleged Miracle Baby scandal was set free in all the 5 counts of child theft after the prosecution failed to prove its case.
Number 2, the fact that the accused traveled frequently into the country does not necessarily infer that he had come to steal the subject children or abet crime. So that even if he went to his house upon coming in the country, that is not the basis to infer that he knew the children were in the house.
He says he has forgiven his tormentors.
For he has no squabbles with anybody. In fact, from what he has shared with me, he has forgiven his perpetrators.
I am not a criminal person. I'm born again, spiritual filled, and believe in Jesus Christ. And all the days of my life, I will serve God.
Elsewhere, 3 witnesses in the murder case of Sharon Otieno and her unborn child took to the stand. During cross-examination by Obado's lawyers, the second witness, an Airtel attendant, appeared to face difficulties in remembering events.
But how much money were you given? Okay, I was given 1,500 for transport. You know you're a hustler. You said you're a hustler. 4,500, you came to live in court, correct?
And there was a light moment in the courtroom as the third witness, Kennedy Onyango Kasera, gave graphical details of the events on the fateful day.
Nikasikia tu mshindo na watu wananipita. Wanatoroka. Sasa nikabaki na mwenye ameingia kwa
The case continues on Tuesday. Migori Governor Okoth Obado, his personal assistant Michael Oyamo, and Caspiel Obiero are facing murder charges in the case. From Milimani Law Courts, I'm Ruth Wamboi.
Now, just also a recap of what was happening at the EACC. Yesterday, they summoned Kitui East Member of Parliament, Nimrod Mbai, to shed light over the incident that took social media as well as mainstream media by storm in regard where a Kenya Power company employee was assaulted in Kitengela. Well, in his defense, he said that the viral video was actually doctored. So his case is yet to be determined by a court in Kajiado. Now, Mary Wanyonyi has vowed to serve Kenyans as she took oath of office as the chair of the Commission on Revenue Allocation. Wanyonyi, who was sworn into office by Chief Justice Martha Koome, was urged to serve Kenyans diligently and uphold the rule of law. Wanyonyi takes over the mantle from Jane Kiringai, whose tenure in office lapsed. The Commission on Revenue Allocation is a constitutional body tasked with making recommendations on the basis of equitable sharing of revenue between the county government and the national government.
Mary A.C. Wanyonyi, having been appointed the chairperson of the Commission on Revenue Allocation.
Therefore, I urge you and the commissioners of CLA to always remember that, and as you undertake your mandate, the people of Kenya are the true owners of these resources. You have been chosen to ensure that the resources of Kenyans are allocated with the utmost transparency, equity, and prudence. And this is in accordance with the dictates of our Constitution.
I commit to upholding the independence of the Commission and to execute my functions in a transparent, accountable, and impartial manner. I pledge to work closely with all stakeholders to ensure that the Commission achieves its mandate. I assure you that the law will be my guiding principle and that no Kenyan will be left behind, as envisaged in the vision of the Commission on Revenue Allocation.
In the same breath, when we talk about appointments, is that the Judicial Service Commission has actually appointed Honorable Athman Abdul Halim Hussein as the new Chief Kathi of the Republic of Kenya. Further details are available on our website. Now, 12 more bodies have been exhumed from Shakahola Forest in Kilifi County, bringing the death toll from the tragedy to 403. Coastal Regional Commander Rhoda Onyanche, in her daily briefing, says a total of 95 people have so far been rescued from the forest. Additionally, 37 people have been arrested in connection with aiding the preacher. Mackenzie is facing several charges of human rights violations, including murder. Tabs on that, 403 bodies so far exhumed. Now, retrogressive cultural practices like female genital mutilation coupled with gender-based violence are still a major challenge in many parts of the country. Speaking during the unveiling of a two-day conference on women empowering women, Narok First Lady Agnes Ntutu noted to curb such vices, there is need to enact laws and legislation that protect those who are vulnerable.
Battling gender-based violence, female genital mutilation and early child marriage dominated the Women Empowerment Conference scheduled to run for 2 days. While officially opening the conference, Narok First Lady Agnes Ntutu acknowledged its aggressive culture that continue to limit the growth of women and girls in the country.
This reality highlights the urgent need to strengthen legislation, improve access to justice, and implement comprehensive program.
There are these outdated old rituals and traditions. Once they are stopped, I'm sure we'll be good to go.
Imaginary Glass Ceiling Executive Director Jinata Kolia echoed Ntutu's sentiments, saying inclusivity and collaboration of both men and women is necessary in overcoming gender biasness in the country.
That in Kenya, like all over the world, women are feeling less than in so many ways. So I wanted to bring it here so they can see that they also can be empowered.
As the Kenyan women could be able to come up with initiatives like this and join hands together, collaborate with each other.
When you are authentic and in your space of power, you will unleash that power and you will see change all around you.
The Women Empowering Women program has recruited 10 women from the most affected communities who will undergo a 4-year mentorship program that will equip them holistically to be champions of change at the grassroots level.
Cultural norms have always dictated gender disparity, so there is need for both genders to work together to bridge the gap.
Now still on women, but now focusing on business, countries in the common market for Eastern and Southern Africa, that is COMESA, should consider developing friendly tariffs for women-led companies. Industry Principal Secretary Juma Mkhwana says reduced tariffs will assist women businesses offset liquidity challenges and increase their share in intra-African trade. The trade PS spoke during the launch of the 3.2 billion shillings Women Incubation Program.
Experts say by lowering tariffs on women-led businesses will help deal with the recurrent financial constraints women startups face due to limited collateral.
One of the major holdbacks for women to be able to go into business is the financing. They don't have the collateral, they don't have a history of business, so they can't go to a bank and borrow.
To help women-owned enterprises in the regional market, the women business arm of the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa says it's seeking to nurture 100 women startups domiciled at the Kenya Industries Research and Development Institutes. To facilitate the training, the government of Spain has set aside 2.3 billion shillings to help train and capacitate women-led enterprises.
We will be launching a new program of 20 million, of which 5 million are going to be disbursed in 2023.
The 2.3 billion shillings incubation program will prioritize women businesses in the digital and agro-processing sectors.
It provides an opportunity for them to be incubated, for them to be helped to develop their ideas into business ideas.
Innovators will be trained on bookkeeping and financial literacy in a bid to formalize their startups.
To be able to integrate outside externally and take advantage of what we have available in the digital world. So that will be our main focus, and also in terms of digital literacy, finance literacy, that's also another focus we're going to have.
Industry Principal Secretary John Mkhwana says supporting women businesses is part of the government initiative to increase manufacturing from the current 15% to the GDP to 20 by 2030.
When people think that manufacturing only requires raw materials or you only require a factory, but the truth of the matter is we need a lot of funding, we need a lot of training, skills, transfer.
The project will also be implemented in Burundi, Eswatini and Sudan.
Digital freelancers are set to benefit from Digital Skilling Acceleration Program by the Africa Digital Media Institute that seeks to equip them with technical skills to transit into new roles. ADMI co-founder and chair Dr. Laila Masharia says technological advancements have led to major disruptions in industries such as marketing, advertising, design, software development and commerce, hence need for upskilling to remain relevant.
We've been listening very carefully to employers who are telling us where they have skills gaps. They've told us that they need more product designers and developers. They've said that they need more people who understand design thinking. How is it that you design a product taking into account the users of that product and what their priorities are? We've been hearing that there's a need for data analysis. This ranges all the way from data-driven decision making, and this is where in every position now, people are being asked to analyze data and provide it to their employer or to their superiors in a much more organized, intuitive way. We're targeting two groups. There's those who are actually already in a career or in a job and want to either work to get a promotion, to be more visible, to understand some of the latest tools and tactics that you can use within a digital career. So for example, you could be a marketer who's interested in digital marketing and you want to understand what are some of the latest techniques people are using to create better marketing content. That could position you either for a promotion at your current position or to find another role outside your organization in the direction that you want to go.
The moratorium on mining licenses will soon be lifted to drive investments in the extractive industry. Investments Principal Secretary Abubakar Hassan says the government is keen on positioning Kenya as a strategic mining investment destination by drafting business-friendly policies.
We have a robust financial system and deep capital markets to facilitate, to enable your investment. But in addition to that, we have a co-investment program to de-risk your investment through our Kenya Development Bank, called Kenya Development Corporation. We have simplified our public-private partnership, and we have special or incentivized economic zones with fiscal and non-fiscal incentives to make sure your capital flows with ease and with returns on investments.
One of the things that really needs to happen is that whatever comes out of mining needs to develop mining further, because we have a great opportunity. And having had this, the aerial survey done in the country, we now have at least a stock of what it is that we have in the country.
The diversity of supply required to build robust, sustainable, and transparent supply chains will open the gates to midstream processing, digitalization, new processes, and technologies.
Businesses offering spa and wellness services will be required to adhere to the newly unveiled National Spa and Wellness Standards as the government seeks to rid the industry of unqualified service providers. Tourism Regulatory Authority Director General Norbert Talam says standardization will allow Kenya to tap into the growing spa and wellness market, targeting travelers seeking relaxation, rejuvenation, and holistic well-being.
A stroll or drive across major towns and adverts of businesses offering wellness services are on display. This has been attributed to a focus on wellness. However, this niche has been infiltrated by unscrupulous service providers targeting unsuspecting clients. To stem this, the government has rolled out the National Spa and Wellness Standards to professionalize and improve the reputation of the value chain. This means all businesses offering spa and wellness services are required to apply the laid down guidelines. Tourism Regulatory Authority Director General Norbert Talam says this will fast-track diversification of Kenya's tourism portfolio to include spa and wellness services that has been infiltrated by unqualified providers. The global spa market is experiencing unprecedented boom, with travelers increasingly seeking wellness-focused activities and services during their journeys, whose travel niche is expected to hit $2.1 trillion by 2030 globally.
Now to sports, the Kenya national under-20 rugby team Chipu is working on the errors that cost them their first encounter at the World Under-20 trophy as they eye nothing less than a win against Spain. Chipu suffered a narrow loss of 34-25 to Samoa in their opening match and play Spain in their second tie tomorrow.
National Under-20 rugby team Chipo is focused on winning the World Under-20 trophy despite suffering a narrow loss in their opening match. Kenya lost 34-25 to Samoa and now focus on the second match against Spain, which they must win. The team has put the loss against Samoa behind them and are working on sealing the loopholes that granted Samoa access to trial line on their several occasions.
We are trying to brush off our mistakes and see how it will go against Spain.
Chipo expects a tough task against Spain, who led Pool B on 5 points, having thrashed Hong Kong 53-0 in their opening encounter on Saturday at the Nyayo National Stadium. The team continues to train at KCB grounds in readiness for the encounter before playing Hong Kong in the last pool match on Tuesday next week. This is the second time Kenya is hosting the event since 2009, when the tournament was known as the Junior World Rugby Trophy. The winners of the tournament will be promoted to the Under-20 Championship in 2024.
Let's go Chipo, we can do this. Now, away from rugby, the suspect who was arrested for possession of illegal consignment of assorted medicaments being smuggled into the country will be arraigned in court on Wednesday. The suspect was arrested by the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenyan DCI officers on Thursday. Last week at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, and until now has not been able to provide a permit or license for the prohibited substances that were found in her possession. The seized consignment contained boxes of levodopa and carvedilol, as well as triamcinolone and acetonide, all prohibited in the sporting world by the Anti-World Doping Agency, WADA. Kenyan athletes have been in the spotlight in recent times due to rising numbers of doping in Kenya, with the country already placed in Category A. The government of Kenya, through the Ministry of Sports, has a zero-tolerance approach to doping in sports. That brings a couple matters news this morning. Just to remind you that our website is active and open for your perusal. That is www.kbc.co.ke. Now, the matters at hand is our conversation on how you manage to handle burnout in your workplace, whether formal or informal, as well as looking at the political climate after yesterday's ruling by the High Court that gave somewhat a go-ahead to hold the demonstrations led by the opposition, who plans to have these demonstrations running from Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. At the same time, the political parties committee there has asked both the opposition and government to seek dialogue, and that demonstrations are not the way forward. So what is in the offense for you and I as Ojiko? Victor is going to be putting that into perspective as he looks at other issues that are making headlines in the political world. I'm Regina Manyara. I wish you a pleasant viewing ahead.
대체 너 그동안 뭘 배웠어? 이런 문제일수록 내부적으로 조용히 수습하는 게 정석 아니야?
제가 알게 된 이상 그냥 넘어갈 수는 없습니다.
The stage is set for a showcase of global talent as Kenya hosts the World Rugby Under-20 Trophy for the second time from the 15th to 30th of July at the Nyayo National Stadium. This year's edition will see 8 teams battle over 4 match days for a place in the World Rugby Under-20 Championship in 2024. Catch the matches live on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Wewe mbona uko hivi? Mbona una aibu ndogo ndogo hivi?
Bebe, basi hii ndio shida yangu kubwa hii.
Nani aliyekwenda kumwambia shemeji kuhusu mambo yako na Laba?
Nani mwingine kama si huyo dadangu alotoka kwenye Aila Visa?
Naona kama huyo Antipili ana mambo yake. Kila siku mambo yanazidi kuwa mazito. Yaani wewe huwezi kukaa bila kusumbua mtu, sio? Najua yote ni plani yako.
All right, welcome back to Good Morning Kenya. It's time for us to take a look what we have on our traffic. Remember, Regina said that along Thika Road, things are not all that good because there's an accident just after the Allsops thereabout. I think there's a lady who was knocked down while crossing the road. Crossing the road. Okay, let me take you through what's on the Thika Road here. Starting with that accident, Regina said, now that has caused some serious snarl-up all the way from KCA University, coming down to Muthaiga Square and joining the Pangani interchange, and that is where the problem is. Thereafter, it's moving until you get to the Ngara Fig Tree, Globe Roundabout, and ultimately into the CBD. As far as that is concerned, Thika Road still looking good. But the problem is, as usual, Kiambu Road, starting at around the KFS there, moving slowly, joining Thika Road at the interchange, and then into the CBD. Wayaki Way, so far so good, nothing to report about. It's all green, meaning you are good to go. If you are using Wayaki Way, it's your time to drive into the CBD without any hitches. It's all okay. As you join Uhuru Highway, coming down to the Radisson Blue there, you're coming down outside Nairobi Capital Center to Mombasa Road, everything looking pretty well. So if you're coming from Mombasa Road, please get your time to the CBD. How about those people using the Eastern Bypass from Utawala, all right, from Ruai Shopping Center, coming down to Utawala, past the Kwandege, that's why they say Embakasi thereabout, everything moving okay until you get to Airport North Road. There is that Katan, that's a U-turn there. It's still looking good, so you can come into the CBD very well. Finally, all people, everybody using Langata Road, it's your time to come to the CBD. Kila kitu iko sawa as far as this concerned. Down to Onyonka Estate, Nairobi Safari Park, Safari Walk there, coming down to Uru Gardens, Wilson Airport, joining the T-Mall roundabout, all looking good. That is as far as Langata Road, joining Mbagathi Way to City Mortuary, everything looking good. It's a few minutes, 3 minutes past 7, so you can sip your tea and get out. Okay, so let's head over to Kisumu. Kisumu, as you get into the CBD, there's a bit of some snarl up as you come towards Kisumu Busia Road. That is just after Wasi. Just about to find out what really happens between this particular stretch here. Let me just put it that way. But after that, coming towards Ahero interchange, where was a big problem. This interchange coming from Kisumu route, joining the interchange into Ahero Market, looking okay, but there's a bit of some snarl up just after Ahero Market there, as you join Korowe Market. Thereafter, it's moving into the CBD, all okay, past Utinoyo, coming to Nyamasaria, and finally into Kisumu Central Business District. If you're coming all the way from Kakamega Road, all okay, moving from Lake Basin, Kisumu, coming to Kondele, roundabout there, and then into the CBD, looking okay. Somebody's telling me that I should look at how the traffic is at the lake. Traffic is sour. That's what how Lake Victoria looks like. That blue patch, you see there. There's no traffic. So, yeah. On a light note, my director says that I should take a look at what's the traffic like at the flyover, Kondele flyover. Jokisumo, uchionade. Traffic makondele chalonade. Miwauru update. Okay, that's Inglo. Give me the update, how it looks like. Very well. Okay, and finally, Mombasa, again. Mombasa today is a bit busy. Nyali Road coming all the way from Hala Park. Remember, a majority of Kenyans actually live towards this side of Nyali, coming all the way from, Malindi direction. So it's always a busy place, but slightly past light stage here, around Kongowea. This is where we usually report a lot of traffic at. You can even see for yourself. This place called Kengeleni Light there, Kongowea Market. That's where it's busy. And for those people who've been to Mombasa, you know where Kongowea Market is, one of the biggest markets in Mombasa. So most likely, there'll be a lot of traffic there. Past that, joining the new Nyali Bridge, Kila Kitiko Sawa, as you come towards KMTC, that road there. Yesterday, how about those people using the ferry? I'll give you that bit. You see that? As you come towards the Mama Ngina waterfront, there's Nalap joining the ferry Likoni channel, this bit here, all right? So this is it, the Likoni ferry channel. It's always a very busy space. There you have it. I've given you the Google bit of it, but that is how it looks like at the ferry channel at this particular point. So as far as that's concerned, let me just get it back. Yes, the Likoni Ferry Channel, this is how it looks like. So far, so good. Just as you come, I think outbound is where the traffic is as you come towards the Likoni, crossing over to the other side of the island. So that is where the problem is. That's as far as our traffic is concerned. Now, I want to take you through the front page as we wait for our guests to settle on the front page of our local dailies. Let me start with the Daily Nation. All right, the Daily Nation. Yeah, let me clear this pretty fast. Very well. All right, front page of the Daily Nation. Enough is enough. That is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. Enough is enough. Now, that's but one page comment as far as the Maandamano is concerned. The country's fate lies in the hands of two gentlemen. That is President William Ruto and Azimio leader Raila Odinga. And we have it, Azimio leader Raila Odinga and President William Ruto have put their feet down on the planned protests. Kenyans will be watching if they, together with the country's top security chiefs, Kindiki, Haji and Koome, will let the nation slide into anarchy. That is what's on the front page of the Daily Nation. 5 men to look at. Raila Odinga, President William Ruto. We have got Interior CS Kithure Kindiki, Intelligence Boss Nordin Haji, and finally, Police Chief Japhet Koome. How will it be? Tomorrow is the D-Day, and all the luminaries are saying that their lines are already drawn. Okay, moving on to the second page here. CS Nakuminche sued over junior doctors' promotions. Health CS made changes to the ministry's senior management through a memo in April. That is on the third page of the Daily Nation. A Nakuru doctor has filed a case at the High Court against Health Cabinet Secretary Susan Nakuminche for promoting junior officials to senior management positions in the ministry, thus placing them above their superiors, saying that it's likely to compromise service delivery. That is on page 3 of the Daily Nation. Here, the country's fate is now in your hands. 5 men to watch as protests loom. I gave you the names. We have Nordin Haji, we have got Japhet Koome, Interior CS Kithure Kindiki, Raila Odinga, and finally President William Ruto. How will it be? The opposition and the government are on a coalition course. ahead of a 3-day protests starting tomorrow. But all eyes will be on Ruto, Raila, Kindiki, Kome, and Haji. How will they handle the situation? Let's wait and see. Of course, a majority of Kenyans are talking about Article 37, but does it hold water? That is going to be forming our part of discussion, where we are talking about governance. Where do we have democracy, rights, and responsibilities? Democracy, rights, and responsibilities. Security chiefs meet to plan for protest. That is, PS directs regional and county commissioners to ensure that lives and property are protected during demonstrations here on the Daily Nation. And according to the PS, from today, if anything goes wrong, we are not going to blame anyone. It is us, national administration. He actually said that. So they are going to take all necessary steps to ensure that property and lives are protected. Okay, why ODM rebels fear going to Chungwa House for disciplinary hearings? A couple of rebel members, quote-unquote rebel members, have been summoned to the disciplinary committee for them to explain their stance on ODM. And now the 8 legislators are expected to appear before a committee at Chungwa House, the party's head offices in Nairobi, to defend themselves of allegations of as associating and supporting the policies of rival political party and contradicting the party's position. The rebels are Nairobi woman rep Esther Passaris, Kisumu Senator Tom Ojenda, MPs Paul Abor of Rongo, Karolio Mondi of Suba South, Mark Jamita of Urir constituency, Gideon Ochanda of Bondo, Elisha Odhiambo of Gem, and Felix Oduor Elias Jalango of Langata constituency. What do they fear? Ruto Camps 6 deal with Azimio to end protests. That is a story on page 7. It is reported that Azimio coalition said to have mapped out an intense 2-month strategy for street protests. And now, according to this article here, Junet Mohammed, Professor Makau Mutua, and a top government official in the security sector reportedly leading the talks. And Kenya Kwanza administration is also banning the midnight oil to ensure a deal with the opposition to end the anti-government protest. This even as Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya Coalition party, maps out an intense 2-month strategy for street demonstrations to put President William Ruto to meet its irreducible minimum, which include addressing the high cost of living. Where there's smoke, there is fire. Where there's fire, there's smoke. Senators' crisis, King leadership criticizes. That is another story here on page 8 of the Daily Nation. You can take a look at that as we wait for our analysts to settle. All right. On the front page of the Standard, pressure mounts on Uhuru over Azimio protests. Pressure mounts on Uhuru over Azimio protests. Security chiefs have been tasked to investigate the ongoing demonstrations with allegations that former president could be at the center of the resource mobilization. Of course, over the weekend, we saw President William Ruto alluding to that, and CS Kithure Kindiki also said, alluded to that fact that some retired top government officials are now funding Azimio protests. And yesterday, on the front page of the Star newspaper, they quoted former President Uhuru Kenyatta as having given Azimio a total 40 million shillings to fund the protests. Okay, that is there. And now security chiefs have been tasked to investigate the ongoing demonstrations with allegations that the former president could be at the center of the resource mobilization. That is the story here on page 4 and 6 of the Standard. All right, how true is that? That is going to be forming part of a discussion where we have got democracy. Where do we draw the line between governance, democracy, rights, freedoms and responsibilities. Okay. Schools absenteeism, drug and alcohol abuse among adolescents remain high. That is another story here that is worth reading. Survey shows that 7 million adolescents missed classes for 3 months in 2019-2020 academic year. Boys are reported to abuse substances more compared to girls in the report. Why? According to that. That is a story that you should take a look at. So the story about former president, Kenyans on edge as Ruto goes for Uhuru over resumption of demos. Kenyans on edge as Ruto goes for Uhuru over resumption of demos. Uhuru is the Azimio Council chairman and has been accused of having a hand in demos. That was also on local dailies yesterday. Investigations are also focusing on the role money played in the demos and its source. How true is that? That's a story worth reading. It's a full-page story here on page 4 of the Standard. You can take a look at it, get your favorite copy. Investigations into anti-government protests are now targeting former President Uhuru Kenyatta to establish if he may have played any role. Okay. And Kenyatta was in Goma, Democratic Republic of Congo, for a peace meeting when Azimio resumed protest on Wednesday last week. And now, opposition leader Raila Odinga called for a nationwide demonstration against the high cost of living and the Finance Act of 2023. All right? So this is the story that a majority of Kenyans are talking about, and even some other leaders castigating that action. How true is that? We will be waiting to see how it is in the coming days. Azimio alleges Ruto allies scheme to hire goons to counter protests. Opposition accuses Ruto of engaging in sideshows instead of listening to cries of Kenyans. Sifuna says that there have been attempts to hack the signature collection website. Of course, he said that so far there have been 1,000 or thereabout attempted hacking and infiltration into the signature collection website. Okay, so that is that. They had their press conference yesterday, and according to them, their tag was, "We want food." That was their tag in their press conference. So the opposition maintained that the protest will continue until the government addresses the high cost of living. Very good. We'll continue with that shortly. And finally, on the front page of the Star newspaper, what do we have here? Hardliners blocking Ruto and Raila truce. Hardliners blocking Ruto and Raila truce. That is what's on the front page of the Star. Pundits say that lieutenants who fear losing relevance are taking extreme positions. Hardliners blocking Ruto and Raila truce. Pundits say that lieutenants who fear losing relevance are taking extreme positions. That is the story on the front page of the Star newspaper. Away from the politics, there's a story here on the front page, and I think this is something worth showing you. So tourists stream into Masai Mara for wild beast migration. I think I should show you that. There we have it. We have got 2 photos there. When was the last time you at the Masai Mara? Have you ever been at the Masai Mara for the wild beast migration? Spectacular, to say the least. That's on the front page. A complete departure from what you have in politics. Okay, it's that season once again. So Constitution guarantees peaceful and unarmed demonstrations, but according to some people, is it? That is the big question. Police chiefs hold crisis meetings over protests. That is what we have here. Police chiefs hold crisis meetings over protests. There are fears of chaos as demos over high cost of living escalate. That is the police commanders across the country on Monday held a series of crisis meetings to plan how to handle the anti-government protest to be staged by the opposition for 3 days this week, starting tomorrow. That is Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And now police chiefs also had their crisis meeting over the protest. And at Vigilance House, Deputy Inspector General of Kenya Police, Douglas Kanja, addressed the commanders. Of course, the CS Interior was not there, IG was not there. Probably the orders and report was taken to the seniors. All right, so this is it. KDF Hospital to be opened to civilians for sustainability. Some good news there. According to the Treasury, CS Ndungu has drawn up regulations creating Ulinzi Prime services. Okay. This is as far as this concerned. Hardliners blocking Ruto and Raila truce. We are going to be talking about that. Hardline positions, both sides, Raila and President William Ruto. Will be taking a look at that. What do we have in terms of democracy? Let's take a look at that shortly when we resume with this. At this particular point, let's take a break and we come back. My guests are already in studio. We'll be getting straight into a discussion on people and politics. Today we are talking about matters democracy, responsibility, rights and freedom. Shortly after this, stay with us.
No, this is a school, not an organization. Being a student leader is a privilege. So if all of you have settled for Kamene, Kamene it is.
Thank you, Malimo. I might be soft on the outside, you guys, but inside, I am tough.
Only Andy will meet at the mall is you. Pay me in Kenyan shillings, bwana.
Mr. Tisha. I will copy research on. They are fine, Mr. Tisha.
And you wore the necklace.
Yes, that was your wish. And you know I love to please you.
Very much certain that Oligario Montoya isn't the father of Fabiola, for her real father was Tulio, your brother.
It's now or never. Let's go, Fabiola.
Let's go.
Fabiola! Fabiola, come back here!
It's too late now, Oligario.
What are you doing, Fabiola? You stop right there! Las bandidas.
All right, welcome back. It's now time for us to get straight into the people and politics. My guests are here. Wakili Gibson Gesori is already in studio. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
It's a tough one. Andol Maliba, also governance expert, karibu sana.
Asante.
And Daniel Orogo, who is a governance expert. You had some rough time with me in the studio last week. You called all manner of names, but that's the nature. We live to fight every single day. Director, probably we start with the reaction on what the politician said yesterday before we get into our discussion.
On playing banning of street protests by interior
and further comments by a few of us.
Speaking after a meeting that took stock of the planned demonstrations and the state of signature collection, the Azimio MPs remained defiant and they will hit the streets for 3 days in their push for the repealing of the Finance Act.
The thousands of Kenyans turning up for protests are not just Azimio supporters. They are Kenyans from across all political and non-political formations who have been brought together by suffering.
The MPs downplaying banning of street protests by Interior CS Kithure Kindiki, terming it as an attempt to subvert the constitution.
These protests will go on in line with Article 37 of our constitution, which, as you all know, provides for freedom of peaceful assembly and picketing. And no person, no authority has got the power to suspend the operation of Article 37 of our Constitution.
The legislators calling on police not to use force on protesters. It claims the protests are part of keeping the Kenya Kwanza administration on check after it abandoned its promises, while dismissing assertions that the street protests are proxy political battles.
Bring down the cost of living today. And you will not be on the streets on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
In Nairobi, we live as a community. Kikuyu, Luya, Jaluo, kila mtu hapa. Saa ile Jaluo analala njaa, Muluya analala njaa, Mkikuyu analala njaa.
Kenyans are past that stage. And since they lack imagination, Kenya Kwanza is the only political formation still thinking and talking about these handshakes and the rest.
Now that is on the front page of the Star newspaper. Hardliners blocking Ruto and Raila truce. Let me start with you, Arnold Maliba. Good morning once again. Hardliners, you've heard what is there. In street language, you use it kind, according to the hardliners. Kind.
Well, when it comes to, I also have got a little bit of a problem with how you then frame who is a hardliner and who is not. Because literally what everyone is doing until this particular point, I don't think we've really gotten to a place where we're actually talking about hardliners. What are people asking for? What is the opposition asking for? Are we really at a place where there are things that should be done, they are supported in law, and people both on the opposition and in government are actually saying no to it? Not yet. I do not think we've gotten there. I've also just seen the MP for Ugunja saying that there is no law that can suspend whatever is happening. We've got Article 137. He probably doesn't know that he's forgotten that there is a declaration of emergency. So there are still more tools to a place where we get to saying that things are so bad. But then we need to give ourselves an opportunity to stop. We don't always have to get to the edge of sanity. We don't have to get to the edge of law before we actually can call ourselves back. Over the last 60 years, of course, as a nation, we've known when to stop. I still have got the hope, even though hope is not a strategy, that as a nation, we will still know where to stop. Because sometimes then you are left to be like Abraham, hoping against hope. That's the only thing you can do. So the issue of hardliners and everything else, we need to ask ourselves, how did we get here? All of us have actually contributed to getting here. This is the point we need to start calling ourselves here. I've seen today the media coming out as a little bit now becoming the impartial umpire. But a lot of times they've actually cheered on and even picked sides in the process. There's the role the opposition has played to bring us here. There's the role, of course, the people in government have actually done. But then what do we choose? You're asking, what do we really, as in what is the edge? For me, I will actually say that we choose Kenya over everything else. That we cannot lose this country. Whether it's about ambition, whether it's about the challenges we have, because the good thing with Kenyans is that I think we've got 83% literacy. A number of Kenyans are quite enlightened. We are a nation. We are not the nation of our grandfathers, but we are quite an enlightened nation today as compared to the past. So I know that there are factors that people, if talked to, would understand that they are beyond what we can do as a nation, but that together we can work out a solution.
Okay, Daniel?
Well, good morning, Victor.
Good morning to you.
I think it's also a pleasure to be here this morning. Very critical questions. The same challenges I had in the last panel, just trying to, demystify the fact that the political class, including ourselves, would not really try to avoid to dictate what actually the media can portray and can have in their headlines. The media is an interested player, and the media has got a freedom to set the agenda, carry forward any headlines they would want, and is hell-bent on us as political leaders to try to be articulate enough in areas that we represent or our issues that we would want to be highlighted, or just give an explanation. So I think I just wanted to begin with that by saying that, you see, quite difficult for us always to ask the media what kind of headlines they need to carry forward. But of course we have problems interpreting what the media want to put in their in the flash on their news. But coming to what you've said, very important questions. Sorry, we are not here by accident. There have been concerted efforts to have the country have a ceasefire with regards to this political quagmire that we find ourselves in. And I agree with my friend Arnold. Sometimes I think Kenyans knew to the point that we need to stop and have a conversation, serious conversations on matters that are affecting the country. We are a country that has learned from the effects of electoral-related violence. We are still reeling from the effects. I mean, 2008, just a few years ago, and there's a recovery process. There's still a reconciliation process that has not been complete in some, in some parts of this country. And this has been heightened by the political rhetoric that is similar to what we are seeing, a remnants of what we are seeing right now from political leaders. I think that is fact. So for me, I think one is always I keep being, careful when to mention who is leading this or not. Because all these political parties are players. There's a sense in which the two political leaders, to some extent, had to cease fire and call for a constructive dialogue. And each of political factions had to propose people to sit on that bipartisan talk. And unfortunately, again, what I struggled to explain in the last set, when the Senator Kenyuri was here, trying to demystify the fact that we can sit and maybe analyze half-truths, right? When one party fronts forward to explain why there was a failure of a dialogue, or the failure to cease fire and have a political truce, why the other party is not there. We wouldn't want to fall into the temptation of similarly doing so. But one thing I know as a country, like my colleagues would agree, that I think it comes to a point when the nation, like Arnold has said, the nation is important. But again, that in effect needs to be explained. Then what is the nation? What is this nation that we need to put forward and consider? What is the constitution? What is the constituents of a nation? As we are going to discuss and maybe ask that the politicians are not important as a nation. But of course, what is the constitutionality? What is the constitution of a nation? That we need to discuss as well.
That brings to the question, because Wakili, where do we draw the line between the rights, freedoms, and responsibilities? Because at the end of the day, if I listen to the two gentlemen, there is one denominator: when to stop. All right, however good you are, you must be in a position to say, I need to exit. But at what point as Kenyans do we say it's time now for us to exit?
The point is, thank you, Victor, for inviting me for this show. I think my co-panelists have really tried to bring it clearly. Regards to your question, where do we stop? We stop at the law. We stop at the place called the law. Arnold believes we need to stop at the place called Kenya, but we're already in Kenya. And then the question comes, which my friend has tried to explain and tell us, that what is Kenya? What is Kenya? Kenya is comprised of tribes. If we continue keeping this on for a little longer, that is going to come out. And we're going to have the 1992, we're going to have the 2007, 2008, we're going to have a lot of things. Already we are seeing undertones of that happening in the Nandi-Kisumu border. I mean, people are already fighting. I don't know whether what is happening in Transmara is also akin to that. So if we continue keeping this up, that is going to come even up to Nairobi. And we will start now fighting each other. And that's what comprises of Kenya. If we are not going to be a bit cautious, or the political divide is not going to tone down their issues, because I believe what we have is a political challenge.
Yes.
Because Kenyans understand that the economy is bad. That is very true. It's very clear to everyone, and it's not lost on everyone. But they also know that we have a country called Kenya. If we have somebody who is at the helm, whom you trust, and you believe that is going to steer you to the shore, the captain is going to steer you to the shore, then Kenyans do not have any option of sitting around and waiting for the clear direction to be taken to the shore. Because we are in a ship. We cannot all decide to jump into the water just because we don't trust the captain.
Yes.
We need to at least give the captain cut him some slack to ensure that we get to the shore. But when you have people in the ship who already want to burn down the ship and the waters, then we need to decide whether do we all want to sail safely to the end, or do we decide as Kenyans or as people in this particular vessel that we are going to ensure that there is proper accountability, that this vessel is actually chartered to the right place.
The issue of accountability is quite important, and I really want us to talk about the issue of governance, because that's now is a common denominator. When you talk of governance, from 2010 Constitution, everything changed. But what is stopping us from making some headways, Arnold? 2010 Constitution was made and customized for us as a nation to have some certain, open landscape for us to develop as a nation. But why is it stopping us from making some headways 13 years later?
Truth is that we've made so much headway. We need to give ourselves a pat on the back for where we've come. Before 2013, of course, before 2010, well, let's just talk about 2013, there was no devolution as we know it. Our political landscape and architecture has really changed so drastically that it's not the same. Normally, I love to say that a part of the Bill of Rights and devolution are the only two things you can't take away from Kenyans today. Because if you did, then there will be a revolution. There's no way you're going to actually convince even my mother in the village or my grandmother that devolution is a bad thing. They understand that there are challenges to it, there's the teething problem around it, but they know that this is a very good thing. So things have changed. We've made progress. There are places where a little bit, this country is more open as we move towards that. I know there's a little bit of a hangover from the old constitutional order, where we had a number of things. We still want to call cabinet secretaries, ministers. We really struggle to even work out, and a number of things have not really good. But those are actually small things. We actually have made progress. What we have a problem, and we need to actually speak to ourselves. The war and where we are going to.
Yes.
Normally, people have said that the war does not determine who is right or who is wrong. It only determines who is left. Because in the process,
in what sense?
during a war, it's sometimes, like during a war, you don't remember who started and what was the cause. People just hit each other continuously. So those who will survive are the only ones who come out. And then, of course, we write history, and then the victors write history as it turns out. But in a war, it's not who is right. It's not at the end of a war. It will never be about who was right and who is wrong. I just need to actually, if you went to the mothers and the daughters, children, and the people who are related to the 1,300 people who were killed during the post-election violence, what will they tell you? Will they tell you about who was right and who was wrong?
Yes.
They will not tell you about that. They will only be mourning the loss that they have. We already have lost about 6 or 7 people in these particular protests. You've not seen any of our leaders, for example, even condole with their parents. Some of them are so young, they've left very young children. So even as we talk about pushing people and egging on, the truth is that our rights have got limits. And Wakili will actually talk about that. There's Article 24. So there is a limit to that. And then now, probably we need to get to a place where I think other people can actually call it splitting of hairs.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the drafters of Article 37, the drafters of the Constitution, chose to use the word demonstrate and not protest. In other jurisdictions, every country has got, if you look at Article 260, it defines a lot of terms so that there is not we don't mix up things.
Yes.
So in other jurisdictions, protest means demonstration. It's sometimes used interchangeably. But is what we are seeing in the streets what Article 37 really is about? Because Article 37 actually goes ahead to qualify what they mean by the picketing and demonstration.
And the limitation
They talk about peaceably, unarmed. We have seen sticks, we have seen bows and arrows, we have seen stones. Even where people are not armed, we have seen people using their hands. Now that comes into the issue of peaceably. So, is what we are seeing in the streets covered under Article 37? I will tell you no. It's easy to argue and get academic about this, but what we see in the streets is not that. Elsewhere, if I look at other laws and how other people define a protest is a violent process that then seeks concessions by way of violence. A demonstration will be a show of displeasure for a policy, an idea, a law, or something else. So we are at a place where we love to conflate. And you see, these politicians are not stupid. You know, the one thing people think is that politicians, they are not. There are people who are so clever in this country. There are professors who cannot even win the chairman of a cattle dips competition. So politicians, even that one in the village whom you think is so stupid, you know, a lot of times we actually have degreenized this country to a level that we think that going to school in and of itself is actually education. We are confusing our going to school with education. It's not the same. So these guys are educated in the dynamics of how to manipulate people, how to go about these issues. So if we are going to keep on talking about Article 37, when we see some of these things actually qualify for riots, when we see some of those things really do not work for what Article 37 is, then we end up here. Like he has said, is that we are a nation of not 42 tribes. Actually, we should be about 72 tribes. The others have not been recognized. There's a process to that particular end. A lot of times, out of self-preservation, people then go back to those cocoons.
Yes, the tribal lines.
No, the tribes are bad. That is who we are as a people. It's our heritage and everything else. But if that is all there is about us, then there is a problem. So as people push on, then people forget. Remember, let's talk about the Kericho and the Kisumu border.
Yes.
Initially, the protests were about the cost of living. But then when people feel like if I am from the other side, Orogo is on the other side and I'm on this other side, when I'm attacked, the people on my side will feel like, okay.
There's a form of retaliation.
And then it picks up from that particular end. So we need to stop now. And when I talk about stopping now is that we have got a platform of dialogue called Parliament.
But is it working? I mean,
the
minority will say they don't have enough muscle.
Victor, Wakili said that we need to stop at the law. What does the law say about that? Because we have got a legitimate parliament in place. Because what is the definition of a parliament? A parliament, in of itself, is the representation of a nation. When you look at a parliament, you should see a nation. That is the village square of the nation. We have got 47 other parliaments where we can actually push these things. Has that been given an opportunity? No. A lot of these things, and actually I've said this, 50% of everything that we are asking for can be fought for through Parliament.
David, Daniel, come in.
I mean, Maliba, we've been on this for a long time. Could be understand that our journey with Maliba has been through NYC and all these other struggles that we've been putting up here.
Yes.
But you see, I really tend to think that probably Maliba could be having a problem with the operations of Article 37. I don't know, maybe he can, but I've heard him mention severally that whatever is being witnessed right now is not in tandem with the provisions of Article 37. But I think that probably could be debatable, because then would we then seek for other provisions that have actually been violated even with the states? Because to be fair as possible, then people would argue that even as peaceful protests, guys do a peaceful protest, and demonstrate, but then there had been an excessive use of force. Then it also qualifies us to go back and look at then what is being provided by the Police Service Act as well. People would go ahead and poke holes to the existing laws and just try to find out why those, there has been a breach of that.
Yes.
But that's subject as to why we're here, for us to discuss the interpretation and how we actually implement some of these provisions that are provided. But let me ask you, and I agree. Your question is, governance, democracies versus
rights and responsibilities.
Rights and responsibilities.
When you hear politicians,
yes,
I mean, trying to use Article 37.
Yes.
Wakili here and all of us would tell us Article 37 is now the commonly used article right now, since for the last, after 2, 6, 7, 3 months,
yes,
the most used article. But why has Constitution 2010 not completely, given us some kind of a capsule out of that article?
I mean, we probably could be quite interesting to listen to Wakili, but my views are, and I agree with, they have been progressive. Our constitutions are a bit progressive. There have been gains that have been made by this constitution. And I think we are in different settings, in different platforms where Kenyan constitution has been hailed as one of the progressive constitution in the region and probably in the continent, and other jurisdictions are coming to learn.
Yes.
The progress that we've made from the constitution. And I've been touting, my friends, that during for example, the US Summit for Democracy, and in Lusaka I had Zambians actually quoting some of the provisions of our constitution. The progress, for example, that we made with the Finance Act, the Finance Act that are provided in the constitution, learning differently on how we implement, the CDF Act, the Government Constituency Development Act, and other laws in this country. So, I keep on telling you in this panel that it's not bad as we think, because there are other countries that are really seeing progress in what we do.
Yeah.
The jittery that we are having right now, and some of these are expected. The American, for them to have been where they are, there have been a number of hiccups within their constitution. British, which do not have a constitution, Britain, which do not have a written constitution, had got a number of hiccups for them to become politically, economically stable as they are right now. So I would like to agree, provisions, progressive provisions, for example, in Chapter 4, that were included in the Constitution. And I agree that there might be a problem with regards to the interpretation of the actualization of that Constitution, but it's well that is there. It safeguards rights, it guarantees some of the rights that were not there before. And I simply still have a problem for some of the people who think that some of these provisions should be amended and uplifted, especially the rights, the sacred rights for demonstration, for example, the economic and social rights that are provided in the Constitution. I purely have a problem with some people who think that
all
that
agree
should be
that
amended.
politicians,
Also,
we all agree that politicians understand.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I also had my colleague Anno saying, that we do not understand that there can be a declaration of a state of emergency, to some extent.
Yes.
Which makes me, and by the way,
37.
and by the way, quoting Article 137, and by the way, as I was coming to study, I might have thought that as the situation is probably might degenerate, there might be an invoking of the state of declaration. I didn't know that probably that could have been mentioned, but I was thinking about it. That even as we are heading to this state, someone might have invoked the provision of this. Because Arnold is mentioning it,
yes.
And you see, it's not by default that he's mentioning it. Probably, it's been a discussion that is being discussed in some quarters.
Perhaps you can give us an
that there might be an invoking of that
You
chapter.
see, Victor, Daniel here is my younger brother. I've come a long way with him. I know what he's trying to actually say, but I'll tell you this. I'm a legal scholar, over and above everything else I do. And I know when we were talking about have we reached the limits, and I said there are still tools to employ. At this particular point, do we really need to get Article 37 right? For example, you do not need to go to law school, for example, to actually just read Article 37 and get. What does it start with? It actually begins with everybody, peaceably and unarmed.
Yeah.
So when you show up with a stick, you are armed. When you show up with a stone, you are armed. But you see, before the arming part of it is peaceably, even when you show up with bare hands, there is an aunt of mine who actually, when she's in trouble, she says, I didn't leave my hands at home. So even these are called arms. So even as you go out and you are not peaceful, that in itself already nullifies what Article 37 is. We have seen destruction of property, both public and private. So if you still insist that Article 37 covers that, you are not being honest. And this is the truth. What are we really talking about now? What is the problem? The cost of living, right? No one, even government knows, everybody is in agreement. That is not just here, it is actually global. And let us not even like equate ourselves to other people. Let's just talk about our situations. We know where we are. Was the cost of living high last year? Yes. Were the people who are talking now talking? No. Yeah. Some of them were actually telling us to shut up. Some of them were telling us they will sort that. Was the cost of living high in 2021? Yes, Victor, you and I were here. Was the cost of living high in 2020? Yes. Did the national, the sovereign debt, when did we breach that? We breached that when some of these people were in parliament. When we messed up with the Public Finance Management Act, PFMA, we breached it. It had put a limit to 55% of our GDP. We had a sitting parliament. People did not talk about that. We are where we are here because we kept quiet over the time. And are we all, everybody in this particular struggle, are we in for the same thing? I'll give you, let's go to where Daniel wants us to go. When there was the first Mandamano, do you remember the order of demands as given by the people who are calling Mandamano? It was servers, everything, and the cost of living. The cost of living was number 4. Yes. Go back to it, and it took we pundits who come here to actually tell them that how you have prioritized that is not how a normal mwananchi will actually receive it. Yeah. So eventually, then they have swapped that, and now they're talking about the cost of living. This, for me, I'll tell you, these are intervening circumstances for those who organize. Yes. Because there are people who organize everyday demonstrations and we don't even report them. The media doesn't even recognize them. Sure. Last year there was Sabasaba. It wasn't a big deal. Because who was organizing? Civil society, the usual people. This time, politicians are hijacking the anger.
So does the common man intervene?
Can I finish? Can I finish that? Can I finish that?
As you finish,
I hadn't executed my point. Let me just finish.
What I was asking is, in that circumstances, in the context, and I agree, Maliba, why would anyone think of even invoking, an article on a state?
Can I read Article 37?
That is what I was. Even to have a thought, a discussion about it. What would have triggered that kind of conversation in this context?
Let me read you Article 137.
Yes.
Article 137, state of emergency. The state of emergency may be declared only under Article 132. We could go back there and see that. 4D, and only when the state is threatened by war, invasion, general insurrection, disorder, natural disaster, or other public emergency. The declaration is necessary to meet, and part B of it says, the declaration is necessary to meet the circumstances for which the emergency is declared. So, and I said, when I actually mentioned this, I said that we've not reached there. I still do not believe that we have not used all the tools within, because there is do we really need to always push the constitution to the limit? No, we don't.
Because when we use the constitution, there's that level of freedom, Wakili, freedom and rights. But most of the time, we usually confuse the two. This is my right, this is my freedom, and then there's that legal aspect. So where do we combine the two so that they walk hand in hand in one capsule?
Where we combine the two is where we create a clear recognition that wherever your rights start, mine end. Wherever mine end, yours start. That is the basic clear-cut definition of how we can be able to create a nexus between the rights and freedoms and liberties which we enjoy. Because if I'm going to enjoy my rights endlessly, even to trample upon yours, then there is I've violated the aspect of your own rights and the freedom of exercise of those rights. You know, rights are exercised, and the aspect that if in demonstration of my rights I end up affecting you, then I'm not going by the constitution or by the law. Then I should be charged. Because there's where the rights end, where the rights of one person end is where the other person's rights start. My right to picket and demonstrate does not need to affect my friend's business of running a shop. It shouldn't. So if we have that clear understanding, my right of having a political say or to sway my followers towards a particular petition which I want to present does not need to affect public transport. That is what we need to have clear in our minds. If we can be able to apply those simple principles. But that aside, Victor, what I wanted to say when the two are trying to get into each other's throat, there is a country called Kenya, but it's comprised of tribes. It's very easy for Kenyans to always sign off from Kenya to go to their tribal cocoons.
Yes.
People sign out very quickly.
It's just in our mind.
Yes,
in our
it's automatic.
Yes.
And then there is that challenge of, Mariba talks about, is it 83% of Kenyan school? But then schooling is different from understanding the application of the law. That's the other challenge. When time gives chance, people say no from the from the law. They say baba akisema ametusomea. That is the law. That's how simple we start thinking. And that is where the problem lies.
And that is where the rain starts beating us.
Yes.
We tend to take the entire constitution and bank into the head of someone.
Yes,
right?
And then we now become enemies of each other. Not knowing, we don't talk about the constitution that time. We are talking about, where have these people done this? Where are these people killing our people? Where are these people against our people being in power? That becomes a problem. And that now divides us and lets us walk away from the nation Kenya, lets us walk away from what is called the constitution. That is the biggest challenge. Once we can be able to solve that, we'll be able to have a cohesive, because you remember the Americans believe in their system so much that whenever there's a problem, they will tell you, let the law handle it, let the police handle it, let the process. Believe in the process. We don't have a process in Kenya which we can believe in.
We believe in
the constitution in Kenya is very easy to sign out from that. We don't have a nationhood which we can be able to fall back on and say, hey guys, we do not need to cross this line. That is lost on the politicians, is lost on the education system, is lost on everybody who calls himself a Kenyan by tribe. Because now you are first a tribe first before you are a Kenyan. So if we can be able to sort those challenges, where did the rain start beating us? You ask that question. The rain started beating us when we had the 23rd constitution, because it's akin to the process where people say that it's the same forest, it's the same monkey, but the forest has changed. The earlier dispensation which we had, you can actually see, if you can actually look keenly, even people who are demonstrating in 1992 have come to the streets. It's like they never left. After all these years, that's close to 30 years. That's close to 30 years.
How is it their problem?
These are people who knew how Sabasaba started.
Yes.
When they had the clarion call, they are up there in the streets.
That's my question.
You know, and they are leading the pack. They're leading the pack of people who were born in 2000.
In 2007, 1992, the fight for multi-party democracy. We are in 2023.
Yes.
But why hasn't the 2010 constitution stopped us from going back to the trenches? That is my basic question.
Let me answer you that. Let me answer you that before my friend comes.
Who are demonstrating what trenches? They were fighting for multi-party democracy. We have got multi-party democracy. They were fighting for a new constitution. We have got the new constitution. The stage where we are today, Wakili, is what I call the third and final liberation. That is my opinion, and that is pegged on Article 43, socio-economic empowerment. That the first struggle, or rather the first liberation, was to kick out the white man and colonialism. The second liberation was for good governance, and it is embodied in the Constitution 2010. The next level, whether you have got a progressive constitution and you are in a free country like ours, it must reflect in the quality of life you live. And that's why I say that the third and final liberation is Article 42. We cannot use the tools we used for the first liberation. We cannot use the same tools we used in the second liberation to achieve the third liberation.
That was our discussion here last week.
So the reason why we are today, the reason why we are here today is that there are people who have never learned how to do things differently, and also there is a generation that has refused to take up its responsibility. And I'll go straight. All of them are seated here, plus you, Victor. You are the millennials. 32% of Kenya's population. Now, the people who are paying the taxes and shouldering everything else, the only millennial with a political party is David Ochieng. The rest of you are in all other people's parties. We are supporting people who, for example, Raila, for example, ran for president at 45. No one here might be 45. People like James Orengo went to parliament before I was born. First, we're not going to parliament, but we have. I'm actually trying to say that part and parcel of the problem of what we have today is the millennials who have refused to stand up for their own nation. And like, he might not really appreciate that we are learned, but I can tell you the things we do and where we are today. Our ancestors.
Only that I will not give a chance to explain my point.
Our ancestors would actually see us as white people. So this is the point. I am actually saying that once we have said everything, we also need to call out this particular generation called millennials. Because behind us is a generation called Generation Z. They are much more global. They love to be part and parcel of their problems. They love to solve them. They are entrepreneuring. They are not as selfish as we who are millennials.
Okay.
And behind them, there's another generation called the Alpha generation. So even as we call out these people, the 1992s, I don't know if they want to call them dinosaurs or whatever, also ask what are the young people doing?
Okay, then you'll come in. But first of all, Wakili, appreciate that you are learned.
I'm learned. You misunderstood my point.
I think in the last set I also made a very clear assertion that, you see, the temptation to always forget to account for our historical achievements, to usher a transition from a generation to another. I mean, you're mentioning, the American democracies and all these democracies we are mentioning, giving us best practices. They have their own challenges, but I think, like Wakili Gesore was mentioning, there is a sense in which that generation to generation is bequeathed, by having a history and understanding that the struggle that has been here through and through, and therefore if we pass over the baton to you, even as you face the challenges that are contextual, but this is what constitutes a nation. Any other nation or nationhood. That is what I wanted to put across. So in the last set, we equally struggled, and I agree. I wish Arnold Malibo was here equally, because we had a session here and a panel who probably did not appreciate the value of that progression from one transition to another in terms of struggles.
What is talking about now, the third liberation?
The third liberation that we are mentioning. Yeah. But the sense is, while we appreciate that it's that generation, that do not want to take a responsibility, which I probably have a contrary opinion to. The issue is that what is bequeathed to us that we learn, what then do we learn from that generation? What is the trend? What is not only the trend, but what is the best practices to say what that we can get from the previous generation to run through? Because, for example, we are talking about a government that is highly indebted, a government that a government of opposition as not only the government. The lessons that we are learning from opposition, for example, the lessons that we are learning from the government. Do young people really feel that the fact that they would get themselves in that kind of political, environment as well? Yeah. Ask around the millennials that Arnold are mentioning, even us seated here. And I agree that you acknowledge that we are all sitting in people's political parties. But even the political parties that we could constitute, what is that terrain that allows us, even us, to form a political party? The system in itself, the process in itself, the energy in itself, the investment in itself, does that provide a leeway and a smooth transition where young people can definitely bequeath themselves for a political party to chant their way forward? Legally, and the two are arguing whether it is education or learned, or people are learned or educated. But even as young people are pushing through that particular platform, what is those opportunities for education? What is those opportunities to learn? So even as we lampoon all this, even as we discuss all this, I think we should give it a context and realities that we are facing right now in this country.
I'm told that PLO Lumumba is already on Radio Taifa, and he's also following up this discussion. And I really want to pick it from where he's left. So, PLO Lumumba...
Would you mind if I just said one thing to the nation before you go?
My point. I think my chance was taken away from me.
We can't afford this opportunity not to speak to the nation when we have got a likely Waterloo tomorrow. So just allow us an opportunity, kindly. I just need to tell this to Kenyans. Number one, we might be a country that is not yet a nation. He's spoken about tribes. That is there.
There you have
but that we have got Kenya, and that at the ambition of a few, there are intervening circumstances that the politicians are riding on to precipitate a polarization that could push us in a crisis. I want to tell young people out there that a lot of times old men will declare war, but it's the young men that will actually do the fighting. I already have said that in a war, it does not determine who was right or who was wrong. It determines who is left.
I think
so let us pick Kenya over any other thing, because we have always solved our problems. We have been a progressive nation. In Kenya, you cannot achieve anything through a revolution. It's been progressive. Even our independence, there was both the struggle in the forest, but a lot of it, actually the biggest part of it, was in the boardroom.
Alol, kindly. My director is going to Ana Kutunyoa.
Yes, I think what I was saying before Arnold took off with my point is the aspect that The challenge we had is that we had the Kenyan constitution and politicians dropped the ball on us. There was a very big issue, 80% and 20%, which can make as we go forward.
Yeah.
But then there was a bigger discussion which was left unhandled. The aspect of civic education, so that we civilize Kenyans. There's a difference between going to school and being educated or miseducated, and then there's a difference of actually being learned, understanding the circumstances you are in, and the best tools to apply. So that is the difference. I'm not saying that Kenyans are not educated. They are actually indeed, and very well. Okay. But the aspect of being learned and understanding what the politician says in terms of Article 37 is where we draw the line. We need to understand that and sensitize Kenyans to know what applies where and when.
Director says that this discussion is actually being picked by PLO because they are going to talk about now in the Kiswahili version. Uwiano and Utangamano ya kitaifa, that's what they're going to be part of their discussion. But we are going to have this discussion next week.
You need to call us again, especially me to finish my point.
Victor, these guys have talked the
We have to cross to Zinga. We have to cross to Zinga.
Okay.
We have to cross to Zinga. All right. Director, let's just cross over to Zinga for the discussion. Arnold Maliba, thank you. Daniel Orogo, and of course, Wakili Gesore. Mitka Rumo, that's what we say in Luo. It's sweet. Tukimaliza. All right. Good morning.
The stage is set for a showcase of global talent as Kenya hosts the World Rugby Under-20 Trophy for the second time from the 15th to 30th of July at the Nyayo National Stadium. This year's edition will see 8 teams battle over 4 match days for a place in the World Rugby Under-20 Championship in 2024. Catch the matches live on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Wewe mbona uko hivi? Mbona una aibu ndogo ndogo hivi?
Bebe, basi hii ndio shida yangu kubwa hii.
Nani aliyekwenda kumwambia shemeji kuhusu mambo yako na Laba?
Nani mwingine kama si huyo dadangu alotoka kwenye aila visa?
Naona kama huyo Antipili ana mambo yake. Kila siku mambo yanazidi kwa mazito. Yaani wewe huwezi kukaa bila kusumbua mtu, sio? Najua yote ni plani yako.
You when you're gone. Do what you want as long as you're with me. Say what you want as long as I hear you call my name. I'm still in love with you, boy. Let us go to the land of love.
When I come home, everything should be alright. So mommy, hold on.
Make me lie when I don't want to. Make someone else some kind of unknowing fool. Make me stay.
Aya, Doro, ushapata msamiati wa kwanza fuadini mwako. Labda tu kwa miaka mingi hauja kuja hapa Radio Taifa na leo umekuja. Kwa yule ambaye anakusikiliza kwa sasa, awali nilitaka kukuita kwamba mwanasheria wa kutafsiri masuala ya katiba, lakini nikaona siku hizi kuna wakora wengi. PLO Lumumba ni nani kwa yule msikilizaji wetu ambaye hakujui? Labda kwa muktasari.
Ni mwanasheria, ni mzalendo wa Kenya. najitaja hivyo na mwanajumuiya.
Ndio.
Sitasema mengi hapo.
Okay. Labda tukianza kipindi chetu Profesa, tukisema uwiano na utangamano, akilini mwetu tunafaa kuelewa nini?
Kwanza kabisa tukizungumzia jambo la uwiano na utengamano, kitu ambacho tunakilenga ni kuhakikisha kwamba sote wa Kenya tunailinda Kenya kwa misingi ya kizalendo. Tusiwe wa binafsi, tusiwe ni watu ambao wanaangazia vitu kwa mtazamo wa kikabila, na tuwe ni watu ambao tunaivalia njuga swala nzima la kuhakikisha kwamba Kenya imeendelea kiuchumi, kisiasa na kijamii. Ndio utangamano huo. Na ikiwa tunajadili jambo lolote, tulijadili kwa lengo la kuhakikisha kwamba tunapambanisha hoja, na hoja tunazozipambanisha ni kwa maslahi ya taifa letu la Kenya. Kilichoko sasa ni viongozi, hata neno kiongozi silitumii. Nimekuwa hapa mwaka wa 92 nikiangazia vitu hivi, tukizungumzia wanasiasa hawa unaowaona hawa walikuwa pale. Wengine walikuwa KANU, wengine walikuwa Ford Kenya. Ni wanasiasa. Nyerere alikuwa anasema katika nchi ya Kenya hapa tunaendesha siasa za kimalaya. Maana yake ni nini? Unaona mwanasiasa mmoja amekuwa katika vyama zisizopungua 7 kwa muhula wa miaka 20. Sasa unajiuliza hawa kinyonga hawa misimamo yao ni ipi? Ni siasa za sera aina gani, au ni kujitafutia makuu tu? Na wanapofanya hivyo, wanasiasa hawa wanahamasisha watu kwa misingi ya kikabila na kwa misingi ya kibinafsi, wakitafuta nyadhifa, na wanatumia hoja ambazo hazifai kwa mustakabali wa taifa la Kenya. Hilo ndilo tatizo tulilo nalo. Na ni wanasiasa ambao hawangatuki. Miaka nenda miaka rudi, sasa mimi nastaafu mimi, lakini wanasiasa hawastaafu. Na vitu ambavyo walivisema miaka 20 zilizopita ndivyo vitu ambavyo wanavisema leo kwa misingi ya kikabila. Ni vigeugeu. Na ukiwa na wanasiasa vigeugeu, ukiwa na wanasiasa ambao ni wa kabila, ukiwa na wanasiasa ambao ni wa binafsi, basi Mungu aihurumie taifa letu.
Yaani kumaanisha Profesa, taifa letu kwa sasa liko katika hali mbaya kiasi cha kwamba mpaka unaombi kwa Mwenyezi Mungu kutuhurumia.
Lazima Mungu atuhurumie. Tuna bunge, tumewachagua wabunge, na kwa falsafa ya siasa, bunge ni baraza la taifa kujadili mambo ambayo yanahusu taifa. Bunge letu halijadili. Bunge letu limekuwa ni bunge ambalo halifai kabisa. Tunachofanya ni kuendesha mikutano ya hadhara za kihuni, tukitumia lugha chafu, tukitumia matusi. Ni siasa za kubezana. Sasa wengi tu wazalendo wa Kenya wanahoji kwa nini tuwe na wabunge? Tuna bunge la taifa, tuna mabunge 47 katika gatuzi zetu zote. Ndio wanalipwa fedha nyingi katika bunge zote za ulimwengu. Tukiangalia mahuduli zetu za mapato za serikali katika ulimwengu kote, wabunge wetu ndio wanalipwa fedha za juu zaidi, lakini hawazungumzi hili swala tunaloliangazia sasa. Gharama ya maisha. Je, umesikia mbunge yote amekwenda bungeni kulishughulikia jambo hilo? La hasha. Je, umesikia yeyote ambaye anazungumzia mambo ambayo yanaathiri taifa letu hili bungeni? La hasha. Wakizungumza bungeni ni kuongeza mishahara yao. Wakizungumza bungeni ni matusi. Lakini kila kukicha wako katika mikutano ya hadhara wakipiora wakizungumza matusi, wakitisha wa Kenya. Hawa si viongozi tena. Na hivi sasa unapowasikia wanasiasa hawa, kumbuka situmii neno kiongozi, hawa si viongozi hawa. Wakizungumza katika lugha zao za mama, hawana heshima. Ukitaka kuheshimiwa lazima uheshimu wengine, na hawa hawafanyi hivyo. Sasa si hata mfano kwa watoto wadogo, si mfano. Ikiwa mtu ambaye ni babu au nyanya anatumia maneno ya matusi hadharani na watoto wanasikiza, huyo ni mtu wa aina gani huyo? Nani hawa? Ndio tunawaita viongozi hawa? Hawa ambao wametembea katika chama cha KANU, cha KADU, cha Ford, cha NAK, cha ODM, cha LDP, cha URP, cha Jubilee, hawa ndio tunawaita wanasiasa hawa? Ndio naita viongozi hawa? Hawa tusipochunga mwenzangu, wataumiza taifa hili letu.
Na profesa umeweza kuzungumzia swali zuri kwamba katika taifa letu la Kenya kwa sasa taswira ambayo inajitokeza ni ya ubinafsi, taswira ambayo inajitokeza ni ya ukabila, taswira ni ya uhuni. Na katika sura ya 6 katiba yetu ya Kenya imeeleza jinsi gani ambavyo viongozi wafaa wawe, lakini sisi ndio tulikuwa katika mstari wa mbele kuweza kuwachagua. Inaashiria nini?
Tatizo lililoko katika taifa letu, na nilikuwa katika mchakato wa katiba, mimi nilikuwa katibu mkuu katika mchakato mzima wa katiba.
Ndiyo.
Na viongozi hawa nao bweka hawa, tutumie neno la kubweka. Kwa wanabweka hawa, kila mmoja na wakumbuka, kila mmoja wanajitapa ya kwamba walishiriki hata mikutano hakuwa wanahudhuria wengi hao. Na kilichoko kwa hivi sasa ni ya kwamba viongozi hawa wamejikita katika siasa za kibinafsi. Kwa nini nasema hivyo? Nasema hivyo kwa kuwa ni watu ambao hawaangazii vitu ambavyo vinafaa taifa. Hawazungumzii mambo ya elimu, hawazungumzii mambo ya afya wa mtu wa kawaida, hawazungumzii mambo ya mustakabali wa taifa na hali ya maisha ya vijana, mambo ya ajira. Na wanafanya hivyo kwa kuwa wanawachukulia Wakenya kama ni mabwege. Sisi ni mabwege tu ambao wakitutusi hakuna chochote ambacho tutakachofanya. Wanatunoa kwa misingi ya kikabila. Unaambiwa wewe ni Mjaluo, wewe ni Mkamba, wewe ni Mluhya, wewe ni Mkalenjin, wewe ni Mkikuyu, na wakihutubia hadhara katika lugha zao za mama. Jana nasikia mmoja tu akihutubu katika lugha za mama za Kijaluo. Nikasema huyu, bwana, huyu ni kiongozi huyu. Anawanoa kwa misingi ya kikabila. Mtu anasema nisipopata kitu ambacho nakitaka na Kenya izame. Hiyo ndio uzalendo huo. Watu wanakufa, vijana wanakufa katika vitu ambavyo wanaviita maandamano. Swali uliloniuliza, je, maadili? Taifa lolote ambalo limestaarabika lazima liwe na miko na maadili. Hatuna miko, hatuna maadili. Kilichoko ni uhuni. Siasa zetu ni za kihuni. Na sisi wa Kenya mwaka 2007 nikajikita katika ulingo wa kisiasa katika hapa Kamukunji. Nikazungumza na watu, nikatoa hoja kali tu. Nikaja na mababe kutoka katika sehemu mbalimbali, wakasema hebu mchagueni huyu, mkimchagua tutakuja hapa iwe ni kielelezo cha sehemu ya wakilishi bungeni. Wakati siku ya kupiga kura watu wakaletwa kwa mabasi hivi, watu wanahongwa hadharani. Sisi wa Kenya tuna matatizo. Tunahongwa, tunapiga kura kwa misingi ya kikabila, hatuhusiki na hoja. Kwa hivyo kilichoko ni ya kwamba wale ambao tunawachagua ambao ni mafisadi wanatuwakilisha sisi. Si mafisadi wanawakilishwa na mafisadi wenzao. Hapa Kenya ukiwa ni mtu ambaye unajikita katika mambo ya ukweli, mambo ya maadili, hawa Kenya wanakupiga ngwara hivi. Hawakutaki kabisa. Ndilo tatizo letu. Na tusipojinasua kutoka kwa minyororo na nira ya ukabila na ufisadi, tutaangamia kama taifa.
Tazamaji, natumai mahali popote ulipo misamiati inashuka kushuka katika mazungumzo haya ndani ya studio nikiwa naye Profesa PLO Lumumba. Ni kipindi cha aina yake katika taifa la Kenya ambacho kinakujia kupitia Radio Taifa Sauti ya Mkenya Zinga, ukiwa naye mwenzangu Dora Manya, na vile vile pia kinakujia kupitia runinga unayoipenda ya KBC Channel 1 upande wa pili ukiwa naye Victor Olo. Vile vile unaweza ukachangia mada tunayozungumza kwenye mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Kwenye Twitter unaweza kutupata @Profesa PLO Lumumba, @Mkondo, @Dora Manya, @KBC Channel 1, # Zinga na GMK. Vile vile pia ukurasa wetu wa Facebook KBC Radio Taifa Sauti ya Mkenya. Nenda pale, hakikisha unaweka swali lako pale na bila shaka ataweza kulizingatia. Tukirudi katika swala zima la mchakato huu wa swala la ufisadi. Profesa, ulikuwa wakati mmoja mkurugenzi mkuu wa KSCC, baadaye kabadilishwa kwa EACC. Wakenya wengi walikuwa na matumaini kwamba ungefanya mambo kwa mambo, lakini haukumaliza muda mrefu. Sijui ni nini kilichojiri ama
kabisa. Hivi ni vitu ambavyo viko katika historia. Tume ya ufisadi ilivunjwa na kazi zetu zikafutiliwa mbali kwa usiku. Saa sita usiku. Hebu angalia katika
huo ni uhuni ama
ni uhuni. Angalia katika majadiliano ya bunge wakasema mtu akisalia pale sisi sote tutakuwa jelani.
Yani wewe sasa.
Basi. Na hawa unaowaona hapa, hawa ambao wanajitapa hapa ndio walikuwa pale.
Uliwafanya nini Profesa?
Kilichoko sio kuwafanya nini. Kitu ambacho kwa Kenya tunakosea ni ya kwamba vita dhidi ya ufisadi ni vita vya mtu binafsi. La hasha. Kuna taasisi, na taasisi inakuwa na viongozi. Hivi karibuni kulikuwa na watu ambao walifikishwa mahakamani, upelelezi imefanywa na tume ya kupambana na ufisadi. Kesi zote zikaondolewa.
Kweli?
Sasa wewe ukiwa kiongozi, ndugu yangu Twalib, utasemaje? Tumefanya uchunguzi, tukatoa ushahidi, alafu ghafla kesi zinatolewa mahakamani. Watu ambao ni wahuni wanachaguliwa, si wengine ni mawaziri.
Kweli
tunapozungumza.
Kweli.
Kwa hivyo utamuuliza Twalib ulifanya nini? Amefanya jinsi ambavyo anastahili afanye kisheria. Na mahakama ikaamua ya kwamba hawa watu hawana hatia. Tatizo ni letu. Nakumbuka siku moja nikiwa pale tumependekeza atiwe nguvuni waziri fulani na wengine sasa ni magavana. Wakenya wakaja pale maandamano wakisema ni mwizi, lakini ni mwizi wetu. Tatizo ni letu la Wakenya. Tatizo ni letu Wakenya. Ukifanya kazi nzuri katika taifa letu utapigwa ngwara, utapigwa vita na hawa watu ambao wako bungeni hawa.
Sasa ina maana gani kuwa na katiba?
Katiba
kwa sababu hizi ni taasisi.
Ina maana gani kuwa na Biblia na Quran? Quran imetangaza wazi ya kwamba ufisadi ni kitu kibaya. Biblia pia imefanya hivyo. Na kwa nini sisi tunajitapa Wakristo, tunajitapa Waislamu, lakini hatufuati sheria ambazo zimewekwa katika Quran au katika Biblia? Tatizo ni letu. Ikiwa tuna taifa ambalo halina maadili, basi hata malaika ashuke, hata Jibril mwenyewe ashuke aje hapa awe ni rais wetu, na hatuna maadili, hakuna popote tutakapoenda. Na hilo ndilo tatizo letu, kwa kuwa tuna viongozi, na nitatumia neno hili viongozi, tuna viongozi wa kisiasa ambao ni wahuni. Tuna viongozi wa kisiasa ambao hawana nidhamu. Tuna viongozi wa kisiasa ambao ni mafisadi. Tuna viongozi wa kisiasa ambao ni makabila na wana wafuasi wao ambao wanawashabikia. Siasa zetu za Kenya ni siasa za kikabila na ushabiki. Na ukiwa na siasa za ukabila na ushabiki, kile ambacho kinafanyika ni ya kwamba hoja inapotea kwa kuwa watu wamefilisika kisera na kimawazo. Hebu nikuulize ndugu.
Naam.
Katika mikutano haya ya hadhara, hebu nieleze mtu mmoja ambaye amezungumza maneno ambayo yanaweza kunukuliwa katika miaka 10 zijazo. Hakuna.
Hata ni aibu.
Ni aibu. Unamuona mtu mzima tu ambazo unasema ana akili zake timamu, anakuja kumuita mtu ambaye ni rais. Hata kama umpendi rais, ipe heshima. Ofisi ya rais ni ofisi. Kwa kuwa wewe mwenyewe ukitaka kuwa rais au uwe mbunge, utataka uheshimiwe. Kama uheshimu wengine, utaheshimiwa kwa namna gani?
Alafu wanajikisi, wanajiita waheshimiwa.
Basi hawa ni watuhumiwa, si waheshimiwa hawa. Hilo ndilo tatizo tulilo nalo katika taifa letu, na kitu ambacho kinaniudhi na kunikera pamoja ni kwamba sasa tuna vizazi vijavyo ambavyo vinafikiria kwamba ukijitapa ukiwa ni babe unatembea kwa makogo hivi basi, na ukiwa muhuni na unapiora sasa wewe ni mtu ambaye anastahili kuheshimiwa. Tusipobadilika, hili taifa hili la Kenya litaingia katika lindi la moto. Nimekuwa hapa mwaka wa 92, watu wakipigana kwa misingi ya kikabila. Mungu katuhurumia. Nimekuwa hapa mwaka 2007, watu wanapigana na kuuana na kubaka wanawake na kuua watoto kwa misingi ya kikabila. Mwezi Machi, kabla ya maandamano haya ambayo tunayazungumzia, nikamwandikia Rais Ruto, nikamwandikia mzee Raila Odinga, nikasema zungumzeni. Watu watakufa, sasa watu wamekufa. Watu watapoteza mali, sasa watu wamepoteza mali. Nikasema watu watapigana kwa misingi ya kikabila, watu wanapigana Sondu kwa misingi ya kikabila. Sikio la kufa kweli alisikii dawa.
Profesa, tumeshuhudia joto la kisiasa likipanda hivi majuzi, na kuna tume ya kikatiba ya uwiano na utangamano. Je, kuna uwezekano labda taifa la Kenya tukatengana kwa misingi mbalimbali kama taifa? Kwa sababu hivi tunavyozungumza tayari hali ilivyo nchini, watu wanaezekeleana kidole cha lawama kwamba wanaofanya maandamano ni kabila fulani, hatutaki kuwaona hapa. Mwelekeo ni upe, Profesa?
Ushenzi huo. Kilichoko ni ya kwamba ni watu ni wanasiasa wa binafsi ambao wanachochea watu kwa misingi ya kikabila. Kwanza tujiulize, wanasema naona wanatafsiri katiba. Mimi nimeandika mambo ya katiba, nimehusika katika mambo ya katiba, ni somo ambalo ninalifunza katika chuo kikuu miaka nyingi tu. Tafsiri wanazozitoa wengine ni tafsiri za kibinafsi, za kihuni, na wanajua hivyo. Kilichoko sasa ni ya kwamba kuna kundi moja la wanasiasa ambao wanataka kulingoa serikali ilivyo. Wacha visingizio hivi ya kwamba bei ya maisha imepanda nini. Ndugu Raila Odinga anataka kuwa rais. Hivyo ndivyo ilivyo. Na anatumia, tuseme, tusitafune maneno. Ndugu Raila Odinga anataka kumngoa Ruto asiwe rais wa Kenya. Na kile ambacho anafanya na anafikiria pamoja na wapambe wake ni ya kwamba tukiandamana Kenya watakerwa na Ruto atatoroka au atatoroshwa asiwe rais, na yeye Raila awe rais. Hilo ni jambo ambalo halistahili. Kuna njia na sheria ya kuwa rais wa Kenya. Kwa hiyo kupitia uchaguzi, na usipotosheka unaenda mahakamani, na mahakama ikisema ya kwamba vitu vilienda kwa njia inayostahili unakubali. Hiyo ndio ustaarabu, ndio demokrasia. Na ndugu Raila huyu na ndugu Kalonzo na dadangu Martha Karua walishiriki katika uchaguzi. Tume ya uchaguzi ikatangaza ya kwamba walishindwa na hawakukubali, wakaenda mahakama ya juu. Mahakama ikasema ya kwamba uchaguzi ulifanywa kwa njia inayostahili. Kama ukubali, basi unatulia, unawacha wa Kenya, unatumia bunge. Jukumu la wabunge ni kushughulikia na kutoa mapendekezo mbadala. Lao sivyo, wakisema ya kwamba sasa tumetoa haki za kujitawala moja kwa moja, basi na wabunge wajiuzulu. Tusiwe na bunge. Hatuwezi kuwa ya kwamba tuna wabunge ambao tunawalipa alafu tunasema ya kwamba sasa tumetua nyadhifa za kujitawala moja kwa moja. Hiyo ni uhuni, hiyo ni ubinafsi, na lazima tuikemee. Kwa hivyo vitu hivyo unavyoviita ambavyo unaviona ni maandamano, sitafuni maneno, kwa kuwa akiharibu Kenya hapa, hata na mimi nitaathirika, watoto wangu wataathirika, jamii yangu itaathirika, wao watatoroka kwenda Ulaya, hawa watatoroka. Kwa hivyo lazima tuseme, na Rais Ruto pia awe ni mwepesi wa kuzungumza na hao watu. Kumbuka ya kwamba taifa ikisambaratika, historia itasema hivi. Itasema ya kwamba wewe ndugu William Samoei Ruto ndio ulikuwa rais.
Kweli.
Na vitu vilienda mrama wakati ulikuwa rais. Kwa hivyo namuomba na kumsihi, amuite huyu ndugu Raila Odinga, amuite huyu Kalonzo, huyu ndugu huyu, amuite mama Karua na wapambe wao, na tayari wamefanya hivyo. Kulikuwa na mazungumzo, wakatoroka. Sasa najiuliza, hawa wanataka tuwe katika hali ya Sudan? Hao watu wanataka tuwe katika hali ya zamani ya Somalia?
Shikilia hapo Profesa, mwelekezi wangu upande wa pili ananiambia tupate mapumziko mafupi. Profesa sasa ameanza kutema madini ndani ya zinga. Uhalisia wa mambo, anasema yeye kama ni mwiko atauita mwiko, kama ni mkeka atauita mkeka, mtazamaji, wala sio zulia. Hii ni KBC Channel 1 TV, kipindi ni Good Morning Kenya, na vile vile pia KBC Radio Taifa sauti ya Mkenya, kipindi ni Zinga. Studioni tuko naye Profesa PLO Lumumba, tukizungumzia kuhusu masuala ya uwiano na utangamano nchini Kenya kufuatia misukosuko ya kisiasa. Pumziko fupi, tutakaporudi kipindi kitaendelea mbele. Usicheze mbali.
대체 너 그동안 뭘 배웠어? 이런 문제일수록 내부적으로 조용히 수습하는 게 정서 아니야?
제가 알게 된 이상 그냥 넘어갈 수는 없습니다.
And you wore the necklace.
Yes, that was your wish. And you know I love to please you.
I'm very much certain that Oligario Montoya isn't the father of Fabiola, for her real father was Tulio, your brother.
It's now or never. Let's go, Fabiola.
Let's go.
Fabiola! Fabiola, come back here!
It's too late now, Oligario.
What are you doing? Fabiola! You stop right there!
Las Bandidas. I'm gonna love you when you're here with me, and love you when you're gone. Do what you want, as long as you're with me. Say what you want, as long as I hear you call every name. I'm still in love with you, boy.
Let us go to the land of love. When I come home, everything should be alright. So mommy, hold on.
Make me lie when I don't want to. Make someone else some kind of unknowing fool. Make me stay.
The legislators calling on police not to use force on protesters.
Yupo mwenzangu Dora Manya, na upande wa kwanza nipo mie Rashid Momkondo na mgeni wangu ndani ya studio Profesa PLO Lumumba. Tukizungumzia nini? Uwiano na utangamano wa kitaifa kuhusiana na hali zilivyo humu nchini. Profesa, nikirudi kwako, hali kama inapotokea, sana sana wanaoathirika huwa ni asilimia kubwa ya raia wa Kenya ambao ni vijana. Juzi nilipokuwa katika msikiti hapa Jamia, nilikutana na rafiki yangu mdogo sana ambaye alikuwa ameenda masomoni nchini Sudan, na akaniambia, amini usiamini, nyumba ambayo tulikuwa tunaishi ilichomwa, vitu vyote vyetu vikachomeka. Ni kupitia serikali ya Kenya, kupitia waziri wa ulinzi Mheshimiwa Aden Duale, ndo tumeweza kurudi nyumbani. Hivi unavyoniona hapa, sina bazi, sina lolote. Swala hili unalizungumziaje, Profesa?
Ndugu mwenzangu, Waswahili wanasema mwenzako akinyolewa kichwa chako kitie maji. Na funzo ni hili. Tumeona walivyoathirika majirani wetu wa Somalia. Tunaona na tukushuhudia wanavyoathirika ndugu zetu wa Tigray wa Ethiopia. Hivi sasa tunaona kile ambacho kinafanyika katika nchi ya Sudan. Jukumu letu ni kuhakikisha kwamba tumeilinda Kenya na tusiruhusu utashi wa nyadhifa za kisiasa iwe ni sababu ya kusambaratisha Kenya. Jana au juzi, Baba Askofu Muheria wa kanisa Katoliki amezungumza, akawaambia wanasiasa hawa ambao tunawaita viongozi, tafakarini, ni kitu kipi mnachokingangania? Kama ni blanketi, kwa nini mnairarua? Mbona msihifadhi ili kiwe ni kitu ambacho kitatufaa sisi sote? Kenya inastahili kulindwa. Na viongozi hawa, wanasiasa hawa, sasa wameingia katika sehemu ambayo inatisha sana. Wanatisha wa Kenya, wanatisha kizazi cha sasa na vizazi vijavyo, na kitu ambacho wanakingangania sio kutulinda wala kutukomboa. Hawataki kutukomboa, hawataki kutulinda. Kitu ambacho wanakitaka ni uongozi. Wengine wanataka kuwa marais, wengine wanataka kuwa makamu wa rais, wengine wanataka kuwa mawaziri, wengine wanataka kuwa mabalozi kwa kuwa walihaidiwa, na wengine wanalinda uraisi wao, wengine wanalinda uwaziri wao, wanalinda ubalozi wao. Na vita hivi vitatuathiri sisi. Wanavyosema wahenga, vita vya panzi ni furaha ya kunguru. Kunguru ni wale ambao hawaipendi Kenya, na sisi ndio panzi hawa tunaopiganishwa hivi. Tujilinde, tujiulize, kila baada ya maandamano bei ya maisha imeshuka au imepanda? Kila baada ya maandamano mtu ambaye alikopa fedha kutoka benki amepoteza mali. Kila baada ya maandamano mtu ambaye alikuwa na uhai amepoteza uhai. Kila baada ya maandamano mahali ambapo palikuwa na utulivu kumekuwa na uhasama wa kikabila. Na hawa wanasiasa hawa ambao ni mambwanyenye, wao wanaingia katika shangingi zao, wanaenda katika sehemu zao za kuishi za kifahari, wanakula bata, ilhali wananchi wamewachwa katika hali ya sintofahamu. Kisha wanatangaza tutakuwa na maandamano siku nyingine. Sasa wana nyoyo za nyama au za mawe hawa? Hawa ni watu ambao wanapenda taifa kweli? Hawa Wakenya wenzangu, na waulizeni, tujiulize maswali magumu. Taifa hili likisambaratishwa itachukua miaka, labda karne, ili kirudi pamoja tena. Na hawa wanasiasa wote watatoroka, wengine watakwenda Ulaya, wengine watakwenda katika nchi mbalimbali. Watoto wao wako katika nchi hizo. Nyinyi akina Yahi mtabaki hapa. Kwa hivyo tusiwe wepesi sana, tujinasue na siasa za ushabiki na siasa za ukabila. Tukifanya hivyo, twende bungeni. Kuna rafiki yangu moja anaitwa Okio Mtata. Ni mtu mzuri tu, mtu mzalendo tu. Tayari amewasilisha mahakamani kesi kuhusu mswada uliopitishwa, na mahakama ikasema haitatekelezwa. Sasa tunaenda, kwa nini tunaenda barabarani kulishughulia jambo hilo ambalo liko mahakamani? Ni kitu kipi ambacho tunakitaka? Kwa hivyo kile ndugu ambacho nasema na kusisitiza ni ya kwamba tuwaonye wanasiasa hawa. Tuwaambie sisi ni wazalendo. Hatutaki uhuni. Hatutaki ubinafsi. Hatutaki kupiganishwa kwa misingi ya kikabila. Tunataka kuilinda na kuitetea na kuhakikisha kwamba Kenya imeendelea mbele.
Asante sana Profesa. Ashakum Sisima Tusi, ulizungumzia mfano mzuri wa hayati Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere katika taswira yake ya uongozi wa kisiasa nchini Kenya, akitaja kama ya umalaya. Ashakum Sisima Tusi. Na ukazungumzia utashi wa nyadhifa za kisiasa nchini. Leo hii tuna mabunge kama ulivyosema 47 ya kaunti, tuna bunge la kitaifa ambalo lina wabunge 349 na tuna seneti ambayo ina maseneta 67. Lakini walichaguliwa na mwananchi, kuna kazi wanafaa kuzifanya. Lakini leo hii unaona kiongozi huyu alichaguliwa na chama hichi, anaruka huku. Huyu alichaguliwa na huku, anaruka huku. Je, ndivyo wananchi walivyowatuma?
Kilichoko, uwe katika chama kimoja au chama kingine, au iwe ni chama tawala au chama cha upinzani, sote tunashughulikia taifa la Kenya. Hivyo ndivyo ilivyo katika demokrasia. Ndiyo maana unasikia kuna vitu ambavyo tunavishughulikia kama wa Kenya, na wakati wa kuzungumzia swala fulani na hoja fulani, kilichoko ni ya kwamba mbunge ana uhuru wa kupiga kura kwa maslahi ya watu ambao anawakilisha. Tulichagua mbunge kupitia chama, hatukuchagua chama. Unanielewa?
Nakuelewa.
Tunachagua watu kupitia chama, lakini hatuchagui chama. Katika nchi ya Afrika Kusini unachagua chama. Kuna orodha ya wabunge wa chama, kisha wanachaguliwa. Katika taifa letu la Kenya, mbunge anapitia chama kwa maslahi ya sheria. Na kilichoko ni ya kwamba ikiwa amechaguliwa na sehemu moja ya uwakilishi bungeni, anawashughulikia watu ambao walimchagua na watu ambao hawakumchagua. Kwa hivyo chochote kikiingia katika bunge, wanajadiliana na kura inapigwa kwa misingi ya uzuri wa jambo hilo, sio kwa misingi ya kushurutishwa na chama. Chama inaweza kuwa na misimamo yake kama chama, lakini mbunge ana uhuru kwa maslahi ya taifa kupiga kura kwa kitu ambacho anakiona na kufikiria ya kwamba itafaa taifa. Kilichoko ni hiki: ikiwa mtu ametangaza hadharani ya kwamba anataka kuondoka katika chama fulani, anajiuzulu rasmi. Na anapojiuzulu rasmi, basi anarudi kwa wananchi ili wamchague. Wabunge hawa wawe upinzani, ni wa Kenya. Na kitu ambacho wanakizungumzia ni Kenya. Sheria zinazotungwa ni za Kenya, sio sheria za Azimio wala si sheria za Kenya Kwanza, ni sheria za Kenya. Rais si wa rais wa Kenya kwanza, ni rais wa Kenya. Hivyo ndivyo ilivyo.
Bila shaka mtazamaji, kwa sasa Dora Manya anarudi upande wako wa pili. Kama kuna tweets, kama kuna jumbe na kama kuna simu kadha, angalau watu wangependa kuzungumza na profesa waweze kubadilishana mawazo, naomba mafundi wangu wa redio muweze kutupatia sauti kwenye sauti vyetu vya masikio, angalau tuweze kusikia upande wa pili. Msikilizaji, kumbuka ni KBC Radio Taifa, sauti ya Mkenya, na vile vile pia runinga ya KBC Channel 1. Dora, upande wako, twende kazi.
Shukran Rashida, nitapokea simu chache msikilizaji kupitia 0700176699 au 0732745111. Kabla hapo kuna Willy Koskili katika mtandao wa Facebook anauliza swali langu kwa profesa ni hili: je, maoni yake kuhusu wage bill ya serikali, lazima rais afanye nini ili kaweze kupunguka, na pia mambo ya insecurity areas katika serikali atasemaje kama profesa? Alafu mengine hapo ya ajabu. Kuna huyu mwingine anasema kwamba hakuna hata moja linaloendelea kuhusu kupungua kwa gharama ya maisha. Profesa amezungumza vizuri kabisa kuhusiana na swala hilo. Nitarejea katika Twitter baadaye, lakini shike simu mbili. Radio Taifa KBC.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello KBC.
Hapa ni KBC. Swali lako na jina lako?
Mimi ni Gideon.
Yes, Gideon, uko wapi?
No, niko Eldoret.
Karibu sana. Swali lako?
Habari ya saa hii, ngoja niulize swali yangu.
Yes.
Niko Eldoret.
Sawa.
Dora Manya,
uliza swali.
Naomba kwamba
kidogo naona kama tuelewani. KBC Radio Taifa.
Nilijibu.
Yes.
Kidogo profesa.
Nikiwa Meru.
Yes, habari swali lako?
Nauliza, serikali kweli inajua maandamano inafadhiliwa juu hapa kwetu? Watu walikuwa wanaandikishwa, mtu alipo 2000 aende kwa maandamano. Watu wakakataa, wengi wakataa, na wale waliali kwenda walienda. That means hiyo maandamano sio juu ya maisha, kuna kitu kiko ndani na watu wanalipwa kwenda maandamano.
Asante sana. Simu nyingine KBC Radio Taifa.
Nafanya?
Yes.
Dominic Mugaba niko Mchako. Sasa swali hili. Kama katiba yetu inaruhusu maandamano, serikali pinga wanazimiwa kutofanya maandamano. Ndio.
Okay, Dave anasema hivi, naomba profesa zungumzie our flawed electoral systems. Ndio, ni kweli tuko na viongozi ambao wako corrupt in parliament and the same MPs ndio wana participate in the selection of electoral officials. How safe are we that the birds of a feather will flock together? Sijui kama niendelee Rashid, jumbe ni nyingi.
Shikilia hapo kwanza tumpatie profesa nafasi aweze kuzijibu, alafu tukipata muda tutaendelea mbele. Karibu tena profesa, uendelee.
Kabisa, nataka kuzungumzia swali hili. Na wasikie na wanasiasa wengi tu wanasema katiba inaruhusu maandamano. Lazima katiba itafsiriwe kwa muktadha. Na muktadha, na nilikuwa katika kuunda katiba hii na nimeiandikia, tafsiri tunazozipata ni za kihuni. Maandamano inayozungumzwa ni ya kwamba lazima muwe na hoja, na mkiwa na hoja lazima muandamane kwa njia ya amani. Vile ambavyo tumevishuhudia watu wakitangaza ya kwamba kutakuwa na maandamano, wanatengeza fursa kwa wahuni. Katika nchi zilizostaarabika, mkifanya maandamano viongozi wanakaa mbele. Mimi nimeshiriki katika maandamano miaka ya 92 na mama Martha Karua. Hata kuna picha. Tunashikana mikono, tunakaa mbele. Na tuna watu ambao wanahakikisha kwamba watu ambao wanaandamana hawapori maduka. Lakini kilichoko sasa, viongozi ambao wanaitisha maandamano, watu wanaanza kupora maduka saa 12 asubuhi, wao wanakuja saa 9 na wakiwa katika gari, wako katika shangingi, hawaongozi maandamano. Kile ambacho wanafanya ni kuzusha uhuni. Maandamano inayozungumziwa katika katiba ni maandamano ya kinidhamu, ni maandamano ambayo ina hoja, ni maandamano ambayo hailengi kupindua serikali. Vitu ambavyo vinafanyika sasa, maandamano yanaandaliwa kwa misingi ya kupindua serikali. Hivyo ndivyo ilivyo, na walitangaza hivyo. Nilipowaandikia ndugu Raila Odinga na Rais Ruto mwezi wa tatu, walikuwa wametangaza hadharani ya kwamba wataenda katika ikulu na kumwondoa Rais Ruto. Kwa hivyo hawaandamani kwa misingi ya kuleta mabadiliko katika hali ya maisha, wanaandamana kwa misingi ya kumwondoa Rais Ruto na kupindua serikali. Na tayari viongozi wengine katika sehemu ya Azimio wamesema ya kwamba wataunda nchi, hata wanaramani. Wana ramani ya nchi ambayo wataiunda wao. Hiyo si maandamano, hiyo ni uhaini.
Idara ya upelelezi iko wapi, Profesa?
Wako tu, lakini sijui kuna hofu gani katika mataifa mengi tu. Mtu anatangaza hadharani ya kwamba ataunda uhaini, atavunja Kenya na kuwa na nchi nyingine. Mtu anatangaza hivyo, na tunasema ni maandamano ambayo imelindwa na katiba. Katiba hiyo yenyewe inatangaza jinsi ya kuwa na nidhamu katika kuilinda taifa letu la Kenya na kulihifadhi. Kwa hivyo tusiwe na visingizio na viongozi kutufanya na kufikiria kwamba sisi wa Kenya ni mabwege ambao watuelewi, sisi ni wapumbavu na wajinga na tuelewi. Kilichoko ni dhahiri ya kwamba haya yanafanyika kwa misingi ya uchochezi, na tutofautishe uchochezi na maandamano. Kuna nchi nyingi tu watu wanaandamana. Katika nchi ya Israel watu wanaandamana kwa mwezi mmoja hivi sasa, hata kitu kimoja hakijavunjwa. Hapa kwetu tunaelezwa kwamba kulipokuwa na maandamano wiki jana tulipoteza bilioni 3 za Kenya, zilipotezwa
kwa siku moja.
Kwa siku moja. Hebu wajihoji viongozi hawa.
Kwa hiyo kwa siku 3 tunatarajia kupoteza bilioni
10 zaidi, kwa kuwa sasa wamesambaza, na kuna vijana tu na wazee ambao ni wahuni wanatafuta fursa. Ukitaka kuwa na maandamano, kuwa mbele pale. Ukisema ni saa 6, ukisema ni saa 12, wasili saa 12, wewe mwenyewe kaa mbele. Mkitaka kwenda katika ofisi ya rais kutoa chochote, kueleza, nendeni katika ofisi ya rais, na askari letu la polisi wawalindeni, na wahuni ambao wanashiriki katika uhuni washughulikiwe kisheria. Lakini utangazi ya kwamba tutakuwa na maandamano saa 12, wewe umejibanza nyumbani kwako. Umejibanza nyumbani kwako, kisha unakula bata na kisha saa 9 unatokea ukiwa juu ya gari unawapungia watu mikono, alafu unasema wewe ni kiongozi shupavu tu, unastahili kushabikiwa na unataka kuharibu Kenya yetu. Alafu unasema unanikomboa kutoka kwa nini wewe? Unanipunguzia maisha, lakini nimefunga duka yangu, fedha zangu sizipati. Unanipunguzia maisha kwa namna gani? Nimepoteza fedha. Akina mama ambao wanauza hawauzi, vijana ambao wanaenda mijengo hawaendi. Sasa unaniambia unanipunguzia maisha, na wewe unafadhiliwa na serikali. Wewe ni mstaafu.
Profesa, unazungumza maneno mazito mno. Kuna wale ambao wameuzia kuhusiana na mfumo wa uchaguzi na vile pia swala la matumizi ya serikali na usalama. Kabla tumalizie,
hili swala la kwanza, kitu ambacho kilinikera mno ni rais kuteua watu ambao wanaitwa CAS 50. Ili nikera mno, kwa kuwa wakati ambapo tulikuwa tunaunda katiba tulisema hatuwataki manaibu wa waziri. Tulisema hivyo, hawa ni manaibu wa waziri, hatuwahitaji. Tena tukasema ya kwamba katika kila wizara awe katibu mmoja. Sasa kuna makatibu wawili hata watatu katika wizara moja.
Kweli.
Na kilichoko ni ya kwamba lazima tupunguze gharama, tupunguze mishahara. Sasa mishahara ya hawa wenzetu wabunge na mawaziri hawa ni tayari nimesema ya kwamba katika ulimwenguni, tukiangalia mapato ya serikali, wabunge wa Kenya ndio wanalipwa zaidi kupita nchi zozote. Labda wapitwe na Singapore au Nigeria. Labda. Na katika uchumi hii ndogo hii, mishahara ipunguzwe. Ikipunguzwa watu wazuri watajitokeza. Sasa ukitaka kuwa tajiri haraka unaenda bungeni. Kwa kuwa punde tu unapochaguliwa unafadhiliwa kununua nyumba, unafadhiliwa kununua gari, una fedha za sehemu yako ya wakilishi bungeni na unatengeza makampuni mengi tu, alafu unatoa kandarasi, unakuwa ndio unaona mtu anakuwa mbunge kwa mwaka moja anajenga nyumba ya milioni 100. Kwa hivyo hilo ni jambo ambalo linastahili kuangaziwa, na hii tume ya kuangalia mambo ya mishahara na marupurupu inastahili kufutiliwa mbali. Kwa kuwa haifanyi kazi ambayo inafaa. Na lazima tufanye hivyo ili tupunguze gharama ya mishahara. Jambo la pili katika uchaguzi. Tume ya uchaguzi ina makosa mengi tu, lakini tujiulize. Watu walichaguliwa wabunge 300 na kitu. Hakuna mtu aliyelalamika. Sivyo? Watu wa seneti walichaguliwa. Bunge la taifa wakachaguliwa. Mabunge ya gatuzi wakachaguliwa. Watu ambao hawakutosheka walienda mahakamani, mahakama ikashughulikia. Tusikashifu bunge au tume ya uchaguzi kwa swala hili la urais peke yake. Na tujiulize. Mwaka wa 1992 tulikuwa na uchaguzi, ikakubalika. 97 ikakubalika. 2007 tukawa na migogoro na migongano.
2002 ikakubalika.
2002 ikakubalika. 2013 watu wakaenda mahakamani na nikashiriki pale, na kile kilichofanyika ni kwamba ikabatilishwa, lakini mgombea ambaye alifika mahakamani akasusia uchaguzi. Sasa na tujiulize, na tusitafune neno hili. Mgombea mmoja tu ambaye analalamika kila mara. Alafu tunasema ya kwamba tufute tume ya uchaguzi. Tumemlalamikia Chesoni, tumemlalamikia Kivuitu, tumemlalamikia Isaac Hassan, tunamlalamikia Chebukati.
Enough is enough.
Sasa hao wote ni wabaya tu.
Profesa, tukimalizia kipindi, kwanza nichukue fursa hii, nimechelewa, lakini Waswahili wasema chelewa lakini ufike, kukuambia jana uliweza kuadhimisha siku yako ya kuzaliwa. Inapendeza sana.
Umekuwa wazee.
Lakini uonekani mzee bana.
Sasa ndio kula vizuri.
Unatema madini kuyatema. Profesa, kuna neno sitaki kulitumia, lakini kwa muktadha wa Kiswahili utanisamea, naomba nilitumia. Kuna wengine wanasema kwamba wewe ni kakaragosi wa serikali. Unaoneka katika muktadha gani?
Unajua ukizungumza mambo ya ukweli kama ninavyozungumza utabandikwa majina. Kama ningekuwa karagosi wa serikali singekuwa serikalini.
Labda unapokea marupurupu pande wa nyuma, Profesa.
Hiyo ni umejua kile kilichoko, ukizungumza ukweli ukiwakera watu. Sasa ukisha watu ambao wana hoja sasa wanasema wanasema hivi kilichoko. Mimi sizungumzi hapa, nazungumza katika bara lote la Afrika.
Ndio.
Bara lote, na nakemea vitu ambavyo havifai.
Kweli.
Kwa hivyo watu watasema vitu vingi tu kwa kuwa hawana hoja. Ukiwaambia njoo tupambanishe hoja hapa, watasema kanunuliwa. Nani kanunuliwa? Mimi ninunuliwe mimi napambanisha hoja. Na hivi vitu ambavyo ninavisema nilianza kuvisema nikiwa mwanafunzi katika chuo kikuu, na nimevisema, nimeviandika, nimevishughulikia mpaka sasa. Hawa ndio vigeugeu, mtu ambaye waangalia wote katika sehemu zote za serikali, iwe ni serikalini, wamekuwa katika vyama vingapi hapa?
Vingi tu sana.
Vingi tu. Na mtu kama huyo namhitaji huyo. Mtu ambaye anatembea. Ndio tunasema, Waswahili wanasema mtu ambaye anaoaoa na kuacha anaitwa kinukamito. Vinukamitu hao. Kwa hivyo hawana hoja. Mtu ambaye ana hoja, nenda katika nchi ya Tanzania, mtu akiwa ni mtu wa Chama cha Mapinduzi au chama cha Chadema, anajikita huko, akitoka anatoka kwa misingi ya sera. Sasa hapa Kenya tumeanza Ford Kenya, LDP, CORD, NAK, NASA, Azimio, Kenya Kwanza.
Profesa, muda wetu haunasi, naomba tu angalie kamera ambayo inakutizama, labda una ujumbe gani kwa Wakenya wanaokutizama kwa sasa? Najua kuna jumbe nyingi Dora, kuna tweets nyingi, lakini uelekezo wangu upande wa pili unaniambia muda wangu haunasi. Profesa.
Wakenya wenzangu, tumshukuru Maulana. Maulana si Athumani. Ametuhurumia siku nyingi, ametuhurumia mwaka 1992, akatuhurumia mwaka 1997, akatuhurumia mwaka 2002, akatuhurumia mwaka 2007, akatuhurumia mwaka 2013. Hivi sasa wanasiasa wa binafsi ambao wanatunoa kwa misingi ya kikabila wanatisha taifa letu, na tusipojichunga watasambaratisha taifa letu. Tuilinde, tuipiganie taifa letu ili wanasiasa wasisambaratishe kwa misingi ya kikabila na kibinafsi. Kumbuka, tukisambaratisha itachukua karne kuiunda tena. Maulana hawabariki.
Bila shaka ni kauli yake Profesa PLO Lumumba, na mimi kauli yangu, Wakenya sote tunateseka binafsi. Msikilizaji, mtazamaji, wanasiasa katu hawatusaidii na lolote lile. Tudumishe amani, upendo na umoja, ndio itakayokuwa silaha yetu vizazi vyetu siku zijazo. Itifaki yote imezingatiwa kwa walioandaa kipindi hiki, ikiwa ni wapiga picha wangu hapa ndani ya studio, wake kwa waume. Upande wa pili, asanteni sana mafundi wa mitambo kutoka vitengo vyote vya runinga na redio, wakuu wote waliofanikisha kipindi hiki. Kwa niaba ya mwenzangu Dora Manyo upande wa pili, jina langu naitwa Rashid Mwamkondo. Hatuwezi kuendelea mbele ya hapa, Profesa, muda wa saa moja hautoshi, masaa 24 hayatoshi, hata mwaka mzima hautoshi. Mimi nasema maasalam.
Asante sana.
Asante Pro.
Asante sana.
The stage is set for a showcase of global talent as Kenya hosts the World Rugby Under-20 Trophy for the second time from the 15th to 30th of July at the Nyayo National Stadium. This year's edition will see 8 teams battle over 4 match days for a place in the World Rugby Under-20 Championship in 2024. Catch the matches live on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
I'm gonna love you when you're here with me, and love you when you're gone. Do what you want as long as you're with me. Say what you want as long as I hear you call every name. I'm still in love with you, boy.
Let us go to the land of love. When I come home, everything should be alright. So mommy, hold on.
Make me lie when I don't want to. Make someone else some kind of unknowing fool. Make me stay.
Okay, I am on air. From that thought-provoking discussion by my colleague and Professor PLO, we now turn gears into health. Now, most people perceive stress as normal in our day-to-day work life and life in general. But just when do you need to recognize it as a problem? Now, my guest today is Mercy Irongo, who is a psychologist, and she will be giving us tips on how to handle work burnouts. Mercy, welcome to Good Morning Kenya.
Thank you so much, Vivian.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm very fine and cold at the same time.
It is very cold.
Yeah.
But we are ready. We are bracing the cold.
Yes.
If we may just go straight into this discussion, what is the definition of work burnout?
Yeah. It is, in another word, it's called occupational burnout, whereby employees or an individual feels exhausted. They feel very weak. They are not motivated by anything because of chronic work-related stress. That is the clear definition of burnout by World Health Organization. Yes.
Is it a medical diagnosis?
No, burnout is not a medical diagnosis because it's more into the work arena, you know. World Health Organization has already stated that it can lead to disorders, but it is not a disease by itself.
Okay.
Yes.
So it causes diseases
Yes.
in a way, you know,
Yes.
stress, anxiety and all that, but it is not a disease on its own. How does one know that I am burnt out from work?
Okay. I know Kenyans, everybody is busy. We like working. And so sometimes an individual may find a burnout like a normal thing. And what we say is you will definitely know you are undergoing a burnout. For example, an individual feels exhausted. They do not love their job at all, you know. For example, a person could be having a lot of work on their desk and they look at the files, they look at the computer, they have a lot of emails coming in everywhere. They get stressed at some point. They can also forget. When an individual forgets to answer a phone call or maybe write or reply emails, that is burnout. And they forget. Even they can also forget their own life. You know, burnout is related with an individual because an individual has their own life and they have work life, they have family, they have many things. So if a person is burnt out, you will not miss out some of the signs, you know? Yes. And most of them, they also experience eating disorders. They could eat a lot or eat less. That is also a sign of burnout, you know?
You've mentioned one sign of burnout.
Yes.
If you can just take us through the symptoms of burnout.
Yes. Burnout is chronic stress, remember. And stress, we are talking about work-life balance. If an individual has a supervisor, let's say an employee has a supervisor who is too a boss who is too overly very micromanaging the individual, they get stressed because they cannot stand on their own. Yeah, that is one. A person also could be having long hours. You know, there are some organizations which have a lot of hours, they don't have shifts. So that too much staying on the machine causes stress and the output is not so good. So most of the time, what we encourage is that an individual needs work-life balance. What time am I getting to work and what time will I come out? And burnout is caused most of the time by people who do not see themselves going to another level. For example, I'll ask a question. How do you purpose your job? Does your job give you happiness? Let's start there, Vivian. Because if your job, even right now where we are feeling good, we are getting happy because we love our job. But when it comes to a point whereby an individual does not love their job, they start feeling tired. They're not motivated with what they do. And the next step is they become stressed, you know? They could also be stuck. An individual could be stuck at work, for example. Maybe this individual has stayed for work for 5 years without any promotion, without going back to school, without any change, the same office, the same desk, the same boss. So that familiarism causes burnout. Yes, yes.
But does this mean that we should align our jobs with our purpose? And remember that we can't all be that privileged to have jobs that we love. So what if you are working in an industry where it does not really give you satisfaction, but you need to work because you need the money?
Yes.
How do you go about forcing yourself to love your job?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Everyone should love their job. There's something we call goals. What are your goals at where you're working? Have you set goals where you're working? Have an individual said, I'm going to work in this organization for this and this much. I'll be doing ABCD to my boss, to my colleagues. How are the meetings conducted? If you have that purpose, the goal, you work towards achieving the goal at your workplace, then you will not experience any burnout. But if an individual is in the same position, the same job, everything is the same, definitely they will feel stressed up. And most of the time, the bosses also, where we work, if there are no interesting activities for the employees, definitely the employee will feel burned out. And most of the time, most importantly, the people who are in the helping industry, not to forget our doctors, our nurses, they are the most high risk professions because they help, they want to help, they want to see things moving. So if things are not moving well, and if they are working on schedules, then they are prone to burnout. Yes.
Yeah. You just mentioned that people in the in healthcare may experience more burnout. So are there careers that people tend to experience more burnout than others?
Yes, Vivian. I can tell you for sure, we've already mentioned, and the statistics say that 1 in 3 physicians, that is doctors, have burnout. So you can see the rate is too high. If 1 in 3, meaning the most high risk profession is the doctor profession and the nurses, and the helping, any helping job in this world causes burnout. Because
anyone in the service space has more burnout?
Exactly. Everybody in the service industry experiences burnout because the service industry has schedules, time. You know, if you miss this minute, it means a lot to the company. If you miss to do this job, it means a lot. So there's a lot of pressure. And you see, individuals are not created to pressure. So if an individual is not really keen and alert about their profession, then they will go to burnout without knowing. And remember, Vivian, burnout has stages. You know, an individual just feels okay, oh, I have a headache, you know, I don't have appetite. You think it is normal. But burnout is creeping in slowly by slowly. You feel exhausted. You know, there are times that you want to wake up to go to work and you're like, oh, do I really go?
Today I don't really feel like it.
That is a sign of burnout already, you know. Or you wake up, then you go back to bed. Or maybe you got another side hustle, like 2 side hustles. You know, we are in a country of side hustles, isn't it? So it is because the job is not giving you satisfaction. And so you end up becoming exhausted. Yes.
Yeah. Where do we draw the line between burnout and this was just a hard week at work? This was just a long day of my work. So where do we draw that line?
Yes. As I had mentioned, burnout has stages. The moment the exhaustion stage could be that of, oh, I feel lousy, I don't feel like waking up today. Can I work at home? Nowadays you're working at home. Can I do Teams? Can I do Google Meet? Yeah, we are privileged with the online. That is fine. That is in order. But if it gets to now, even your colleagues are affected by the way you're making negative, somebody is making negative issues about work. An employee is ever complaining about their work and they're still stuck there, they're not changing their jobs. That is the time it's really getting to chronic. But if it is this of, I don't feel like working, let me take leave, you know, there are people, even myself, I would feel I've worked so hard, so it's time for my leave. That is very normal. And I had said, an individual needs to set goals. Like January to December, where will I get my leave days? My company gives me 21 leave days. What will I do with these leave days? There are people who go to, their leave days is when they go to side hustle because of the demanding life we are having.
Yeah.
But they do not know that they are causing themselves a lot of stress. The body needs a lot of relaxation. The body needs schedules to know I'm going on leave. I'll go on a holiday. I'll go farming, you know. I'll go visit the poor, the widows, the widowers, for them to feel the satisfaction and stay away from their job. Because what we do in the psychology world is too much familiarity causes stress and causes exhaustion in the mind. Yes. If life isn't interesting, if your work isn't interesting, Vivian, you'll experience exhaustion, which you're not able to tell. You'll just be thinking, oh, I don't love my job, you know? Yes.
Yeah. There's also the issue of, while you were talking about that, I just thought of the issue of probably unfair treatment at work. Sometimes burnout is not just because you have a workload of work. Sometimes it can come in the sense of, you know, you're not being treated fairly at the workplace. Is that correct?
True. There are organizations which are very good. They really care about the well-being of employees. And actually, we are really trying our best as psychologists to have talks to educate employers how mental health is good for the output of the employees, because an employee cannot be able to give you the results if they are stressed, no matter the paycheck, you know, no matter. They could be high or low. But if an employee is treated unfairly, for example, too much work, working hours, you know, too much working. We are human beings, you know, and we were created 8 to 5 job, go home, relax, be with your family, you know, feed your, if you are farming, if you have another, you go for people go for volleyball, football clubs, golfing, you know, because the body, our mind, for a person to have good mental states, they need to have different things working in their mind. So if an employee is unfairly treated by long working hours, no breaks, they'll get burnout. If an employee has a very stressing boss, and that one I would like to emphasize, that it is good to notice if your boss is causing you stress. And what about the vice versa? The boss also needs to know if their juniors are causing them stress. You know, boss always, and the employees are fast to do the deadlines. Of course, burnout, you know. They want figures done, you know. We have deadlines. Set some targets. Have we? If the marketing manager is really bombarding, you know, you're dreading for that meeting, get stressed. And that is where you hear people complain of chest. They have chest pains, they have shoulder pains, the neck pains, headaches. It is because of the anxiety, too much overload, and the boss does not want to hear. There are also bosses who are very bad micromanagers. You know, they have given you a task. A boss has given a task to their employees. And because the employees are up to the standard of their work, they should meet the criteria of what the boss needs. But there are bosses who are so nitty-gritty. Did you do, you know, they want you to sit down again, redo the job. So that one causes burnout to the employee, to the worker. So again, bosses here, both ways. We have talked about both ways. Either the boss himself, they need teamwork. They're doing 5, we're going home, or 7, we will go home. Let us try to mind each other, you know. So to answer you, Vivian, bosses who micromanage can cause an employee burnout.
And what responsibility does an employer maybe have to ensure that their employees have a good mental health? Because it's a responsibility that they have, right?
Yes.
What are some of those responsibilities that they have on that?
Yeah. So we are really, as I had told you earlier, we are really into employee, calling it employee assisted program, whereby a psychologist or a mental health practitioner will be stationed, or employees will be sent to the mental health practitioner. Let's say, for example, an employee has lost a loved one. Definitely your output will not be the same. You are grieving, isn't it? Maybe an employee has been given a terminal illness news, that will cause stress. Maybe an employee is undergoing marital issues, gender-based violence, domestic violence. All these, remember, human beings come to the office to work. You can't draw the line, because once everybody gets to their office, they have another life, their own life, and you cannot draw the line. So what are we saying? Employers, we are really trying to emphasize on the employers to have mental well-being, clean organizations. When and say, oh, I'll just to know that this Vivian is not sick. Vivian is just stressed.
She's just fatigued.
And that is, most people go to the hospital. Oh, I'm feeling lousy. I have headaches. Once they go, they queue, they get tested, blood test is done, heart rates, everything is okay. And the doctor just looks at you like this and they're wondering, okay, they prescribe you a painkiller and they say, oh, Mercy, go and sleep. Because we are so overwhelmed. Stress. So employers need to know, if an employee is coming late to work, like for a period of 1 week, it is the responsibility of the employer to know, why is Mercy coming late to work? How is Mercy's life apart from the office? How do I make sure that Mercy is giving me what I need as a boss? Is she meeting the targets? How is she? So employers, wherever they are, I know they are listening to us and watching us. It is for their own good to have mental clinics for their employees. Yes.
But what about them, the employers? Because they also get burnouts. So are they also supposed to be going for these clinics, or just what are the remedies for them as well?
Okay, Vivian, you've put me to the deep end. Now, employers, they are the worst hit. Remember their bosses, maybe MDs, bosses, they have a lot on their shoulders. They have to keep the company making profits. They have to make sure that structures are being met nicely. They have to make sure that the company has a good, status, whatever, in whichever service they are. So employers, in fact, this is the greatest thing. Employers are the people who get burnout without knowing, because they have the push, the pressure. I have to make sure that the company moves from this level to the other. So, Vivian, mental health does not know an employee, neither does it know an employer. Mental health is across the board, and nobody is immune to feeling exhausted, to feeling anxious, and to feeling burnt out. Yes.
True.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked about employees, employers, that is in the formal sector. There's this other sector which holds a huge chunk in the country at the moment. That is the informal sector. What about them? You've self-employed yourself, unabebeanga watu mizigo na mkokoteni. What about that person?
Same thing, change of environment. Remember, we are all human beings. We have the mind, we have the body. So the same mkokoteni guy there at Marikiti, 10 sacks per day, I don't know how many they carry per day. They will feel the same exhaustion to a country director or a continent director. Why? Because the mind is the same. the workload is always in the, this is physical, yeah, it is physical, yes, for the Marikiti guy. But once he goes home, he realizes that he cannot go to work tomorrow because he's exhausted physically and emotionally. And remember, once the mind is exhausted, your whole body is exhausted. So the same ratio of the director seated on a seat and the ratio of the mkokotone guy is the same. It's only that this one is so much physical, but the mind is the same. If the mind has a lot of things that it carries in the mind and there is no breaks, it has to have a burnout. That is definitely, yes. Yeah. And talking about that, there's a lot of unemployment in this country.
Yes.
And you find that there are people also who get burnt out because of doing nothing, you know? Ambitions, they say, I would like, I'm this age, imagine a 21-year-old youth today, highly ambitious, maybe they finished their campus, they have not gotten a job, they tend to be frustrated. Their colleagues have already gotten a good job, flossing their new Subaru, you know, and they're like, where have I been? That causes burnout to the person who is unemployed. And that leads to substance abuse. They end up now drinking too much. They end up being addicted by so many addictions because they're feeling burnt out for not achieving what they wanted.
Yeah. You've actually talked about that, and I read that there are two types of burnout. There's the burnout where we've talked about, there's this workload, it's too much going on, you know. But then again, there's this other burnout that most people do not talk about, which is the burnout where you might even be having a job, but you don't feel challenged enough. You just go to that workplace. There's not much to do. Like, that's a burnout as well. I was surprised to know that is a burnout. I thought burning out from work is you're just tired, there's too much work to do, but not having too much work to do is also burnout?
Yes, it is, definitely.
How?
Yeah, because you see, a human being is a progressive individual. Everybody is progressive. And if somebody finds they are not progressing in their life, they end up feeling burnt out. Why am I not going to the next level, Vivian? You know, if 5 years back, someone is the same, they will experience a burnout, the push. I should be moving from this. I should be having masters. I should be having a PhD. I should be, you know, be a director somewhere. But still, they are still on the same level. So they feel burnt out. So here, we're talking about not achieving your goals. And here, over ambition. Yes.
There's too much going on.
Yes.
All right. We are talking about burnout at places of work, and Miss Mercy Irungu is here with us. We'll take a short break right now. We'll be back to talk more about this discussion.
Mbona una aibu ndogo ndogo hivi?
Bebe, basi hii ndio shida yangu kubwa hii.
Nani aliyekwenda kumwambia shemeji kuhusu mambo yako na Laban?
Nani mwingine kama si huyo dadangu alotoka kwenye Aila Visa?
Naona kama huyo Auntie Pili ana mambo yake. Kila siku mambo yanazidi kwa mazito. Yaani wewe huwezi kukaa bila kusumbua mtu, sio?
Najua yote ni plani yako.
Welcome back. Burnout at places of work is the discussion we are having this morning right here on Good Morning Kenya Health Tuesday. Now, Mercy, there's a stigma around work burnout. You know, someone may be wondering, you have a job. How dare you complain that you are being worked out? You know, how dare you complain that it's too much work? Yet there is a very high unemployment rate in the country. How do we tackle that stigma? Like, I don't need to say I'm tired of my work because there's someone else out there who doesn't have a job and would wish to come and take this position because they have the papers. So how do we work around the stigma?
Yeah, in every health issue, there's always a stigma across the board. And even burnout has its own stigma. For example, I'll give an example of the people who are helping, the helping services. Let's say doctors. A doctor is a person who is really good, you know, when you're sick. They treat you and you get medication and you get up and healed. And they will not like to say they have work-life balance. They will not say they are burnt out, because even their colleagues will like, how comes you're burnt out? What's up? Why? I mean, you're not taking care of yourself, and you're the one who takes care of other people. You see, that's already a stigma. And so we would like to demystify this stigma by saying, if an individual is burnt out, please come out. It is for your own good. Accept it and say, Vivian Manze, I'm just out. I need a break, you know? And the other side, even those people who are not employed, they need to know once they get there, they'll also experience the same, because as we said earlier, we are human beings. We are prone even to mental illnesses because of the kind of jobs we are doing, the kind of work-life balance we are trying to see. So here, it is always important to come out. And I will encourage every employee, if you experience if they experience what we've already talked about, you know, sleeplessness, constipation, lack of appetite.
Did you just say constipation?
Yes.
What is the relation between constipation and being overworked?
Yeah, imagine, Vivian, that is a lesson for a whole day.
Okay.
Because our body is created in a way that it should function naturally. So once an individual has stress at work, their stomach most of the time closes up because things are not functioning well, you know. It starts from the mind. Everything in a human being starts from the mind. If the mind is feeling burnt out, even you'll not have time to eat. For example, if an individual is working so hard, too much, long hours, when will they get time to eat? And if they eat, maybe they're eating junk food. Maybe they're not eating a health balanced. So constipation creeps in. And maybe because of their stress, lack of sleep, there's a problem with the bowel movement. Yeah, and most people end up being so big or too thin. That is still a sign of a burnout. So what are we saying? We are calling out people. Please, guys, come out, accept kimeumana hapo your side, go and be checked, do a burnout test. If it comes positive, the better for you, because you are on the road to recovery. Yes.
Speaking about one being on the road to recovery of a burnout, how does one treat a burnout? And is it possible for one to recover from work burnout when they are still in the same environment that gave them that, you know, that disorder?
Yes. Now, I would like to speak about work-life balance. I know there is no line between job and your personal life. That is where most of the people end up becoming burned out, by not really drawing the line. So the first thing, Vivian, once an individual comes from work, forget about now the laptop. You know, there are people who carry work at home.
Yeah.
They are transferring the office to the home, and then their kids, they pluck out the laptop. Others, the mouse is broken. You know, there are so many things. So I would suggest that people, please, they should not carry work home, because when you go home and find those babies, you find your husband, your wife, you find your family, you tend to change your environment. And what happens? You become happy. What about engaging in a club, For example, if it is a CEO, it's time to go and take a walk. You can go to Karura, wherever you're in the country. Go to the forest and walk. Like 15 to 20 in the morning or depending with the work schedule. And we had already talked about setting the goals in our to set mental health. Does not have the way. You can get yours. How? Exercises, for example. Yeah. And nowadays, even YouTube, you know, it's good. It really makes you feel very good hormone called oxytocin or dopamine. It's a feel-good hormone. Everybody needs it, you know. And once an individual exercises, the body relaxes. You know, it removes the toxins, and you feel that good feeling, you know. Diet is another one. How do we eat? Do we eat foods? Do we eat nuts, for example? Nuts are very good for the mental health. Vivian. Yes. Do we take
all kinds of nuts?
Yes, nuts. Nuts are good. How are our diet? Is it balanced? What time do we eat? You know, I think it all starts there. Something else I know it is very new in the Kenyan culture is meditation. Yeah, guys, you gotta know how to meditate, because meditation is a place whereby you just stay alone, Vivian, alone. Let's say it's in the evening after work. Shut yourself in your room. Experience that quietness until you feel your heart pounding. Kuchu, kuchu, you know? That is the thing. Because once you don't realize your inner being, you as a person, you cannot give anything to your family. You cannot give anything to your boss.
That's true. You cannot pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. So a meditation is a place whereby you refuel. An individual refuels. You remember how the day was, you know. We will remember our show today when we meditate. You'll also remember what is causing you stress. Then you will realize, can I talk to my boss and see how I can be taken to this shift for this period for me to recover from my burnout, you know? So mindfulness, we've talked about it. And what about going for a holiday? Yeah? A holiday, I mean, it's relative, isn't it, Vivian?
Yeah.
There are people who like bird watching, you know? There are people who like fishing, people who like going to the beach, some like mountain climbing. I mean, what do you like so that you don't get burnt out?
What do you enjoy doing? What makes you feel alive when you are in that moment? You know, and I understand from all the treatment you've talked about, the treatment, things you can do to treat burnout. What I'm getting is simply self-care. It's simply self-care, because everything you're pointing out is just self-care. Taking time to take care of yourself, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and to add on that, sorry, Vivian, to add on that, spirituality is also part of the list. How are you connected to your spirituality? Whichever creed, it's good because it gives you a sense of belonging and you feel satisfied. You feel fulfilled when you're in the presence, in the spiritual world.
Yeah. Okay, so there's that.
Yes.
And someone may be watching and they're like, yes, we know about all that, by the way. It's not like we don't know, but do we have time to do all these things? And this takes me to the question of, is there a regulation where companies, they have this regulation that is there for every employer maybe on making sure that their employees have time? Because there are some workplaces where people are overworked. Like you have crazy hours. You work from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. You know, there are places where you have no leave days. There are places where you have no rest day at all. There's no holiday for you. So is there a regulation?
Oh, yeah. To answer that, I'm very sure that there's a regulation because everybody should work according to the contract. The Employee Act. How many hours should an employee stay in a certain job? Assuming it's even a machine operating job, you know? Literally, you cannot operate a machine for many hours without feeling exhausted. So there is the Employee Act and also the labor laws, you know, whereby I don't know if they have followed Vivian, but to add on that, there is also the mental health, which is now, even recently, the Kenyan government about mental health.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure even here in Kenya, we are going to embrace every organization to have mental health awareness. Currently, we are doing the mental health awareness so that we can hear what the employees are going through and also come up with ways with the employer and the employees for the better of the sanity of the people in the organization. Yes.
So when we talk of burnout, someone may look at it as a small issue, like it's just not too much, but there are extremes. I mean, we have experienced and we've heard of cases where people commit suicide. We've heard of those cases.
Yes.
Simply because work burnout. So these are extremes that we should talk about and not just assume, you know?
Exactly, yeah, true. Yeah, you are reminding me of an incident we had from I don't know, here in this country about somebody who, an employee who committed suicide. And it is because of their work, they could not be able to comprehend and they became stressed up. And what did they do at the end of the day? They committed suicide. So burnout is very real, Vivian.
Yeah.
And the stigma, most of the people who commit suicide, it is because of the stigma. What will people say? I'm a very educated person. I'm a good person in the society. And then I have burnout. And you see, once it reaches, there are many stages of burnout. We had talked about them. And once it reaches now the chronic stage, before it reverses to the normal, you know, that person is not ready to face the consequences. And you know, we have already said the remedies are very simple. There are things that we can be able to follow.
Yeah.
But when people have that extreme burnout, they end up committing suicide. And for sure, this is an awakening for people to realize where they are, you know, which stage are people, where are you? Are you in that stage of, I mean, I'm just exhausted, or are you in the extreme of feeling burnout? Please, I would encourage people to do a burnout test that will say exactly where you are, to know if you need to know that you don't have a burnout or you have acute burnout or it's chronic. Yes.
So you just go to hospital and say you want a burnout test?
Okay. The best place to go is to see a psychologist.
Okay.
They can come and we do a psychologist, a burnout test. And the results will come out. And this is across the board. For employees, employers, everybody. They are prone to burnout. And it is good to know which level everybody is in their burnout, so that if it is extreme, you reduce. And it is very good. It will tell you, the test will say, this is where you are. So can we work backwards? Yeah. How is your schedule at work? How is your family? How is your work-life balance? How is you as a, even there are some personalities which are prone to burnout. The people who are very anxious, individuals who are very anxious, they also tend to be at risk of burnout, Vivian. Yeah.
All right, so right now as a country, we are experiencing a lot.
Yes.
And I feel like we should mention a bit about mental health, because as we know, we will be having demonstrations tomorrow, 3 days consecutively. And this one, it causes stress, you know, because I'm thinking about how am I going to get to work? I need to go to my workplace, but I'm afraid if the demonstrations are going to happen, if people are going to be rowdy, will I be safe? I need to close my business because I won't open my business on that day. So I believe mental health right now at the moment for most people is not at its best. So if you may give us just few tips as we wind up, few tips on how to maintain sanity during this time.
Yeah. Thank you, Vivian. Sure, it is a crucial time, especially for people to remain sane. Right now, there's a lot of anxiety going around in people's minds. Things are not moving because, like, everybody's planning to do their work tomorrow, Thursday and Friday, and could be they're feeling anxious. What I would tell them is to just relax. If an individual feels anxious, they want to do something and they cannot do, to breathe in. Yeah, just to breathe in and out. Breathe in and out. That will help in not feeling anxious, and the breathing system will go and you'll get energy. That is one. Another one is people to remain calm. You know, in every situation, it's always good first to remain calm before you take a step. Yeah. So I know our youth, they are out there. What are your goals as a youth, for example? Yeah. Know the goals. Are an individual's goals for demonstrations, or are your goals for getting a job? What is your goal in this demonstration? And I would suggest the goal to be positive. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I believe they've had you. Thank you so much for taking us through this discussion. It has been very, very insightful. We appreciate. That is all the time we had right here on Good Morning Kenya. For everyone, or to everyone who has made this program a success today, we say thank you, and we wish each and every one of you who is watching us a good day, and may you enjoy the rest of your viewing. Bye-bye.
The great playwright Bertolt Brecht said, "Art is not a mirror held up to society, but rather a hammer with which to shape it." Like many of the pieces here, Kalmash situates herself between tradition and the contemporary world through her striking artwork, most of them depicting the growth, strength, and transformation